We'll wait till we see a picture. Thank you. So this is the advisory committee meeting. It is Tuesday, February 11th at 7 o'clock, and we're meeting as we do every week to discuss budgets and a variety of items relating to town finances. Before I begin with our first person, I'd just like to make a statement about what the advisory committee's position and process is regarding meeting records and what we hand out as far as items at our meetings. First of all, there's no requirement that we give this information to the public. However, we have decided as a committee to follow the lead of the Board of Selectmen, which is once our committee gets a document, whatever it might be, then it'll be available to the audience. If we have enough copies, we'll make it available then. If not, through the open, not the open meeting law, but the document you request, you can request it and it'll be made available to you. Just need to go to Linda Day. So just wanted to make that comment, and now we can begin. Jim Craval,
Yes.
Veterans Agents, has come back to see us, and we appreciate it. You can come up if you want.
Now I'll stay.
You're
I'll
happy
stay.
sitting next to
I'm
Don.
happy. I'll stay right here. I have
Okay.
a cold, so I'll stay as far as I can.
Oh, yeah, please, please.
I just won't touch it.
Thank you.
Or kiss him.
You have a policy against that, too.
Do we have a lot of policies here? This is good. Okay, thanks for coming back. And we asked you because at the time that you were in originally, we were concerned about the budget for the Veterans Benefits staying as it was last year. We asked you to meet with with Julie Costello, the town accountant, and you have done that. Can you just bring us up to date what the two of you?
Julie and I met, I don't know, last week, I guess. And we discussed the budget and went over this year's budget, and we arrived at $12,000, and we feel that's pretty good. That'll be good for the year.
I think you were able to determine that there was one large expenditure, and you thought that that was not something that would...
Hopefully that won't happen again.
Right.
There's a possibility we may be losing a veteran, move to another town, so we might have a surplus. You never know, but
Yeah.
it's hard to tell.
So all we can do is what we've done in the past is
Yep.
just deal with who we have that we're currently
Right.
serving and not
Yep.
anticipate new people or people coming or going.
And that may not happen until April, May anyway, so.
Well, we shouldn't be surprised if there is an increase at some point next year, because Jim is increasing his outreach.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. I just happened, and I know you made mention of it, of maybe doing some kind of flyer with the
Right.
senior newsletter.
There's, Kate Hogan is putting something in the town, there's a town crier paper, maybe for Stowe and Bolton.
It might be the New Independent.
Independent, yes. So there's gonna be a little ad put in that for me.
Okay.
I have a introductory letter drafted that I showed Don, and he kind of approved that. We just gotta figure out how to get it out to the veterans.
That's good. Well, we certainly...
Easiest way possible.
we know who they are
Yeah.
after the...
I don't know if you want, I don't know how to do it. By mail or,
We'll get it done one way or another.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great, because I think even though you were available at the Veterans Day breakfast, and I'm hoping that if this continues on, you'll be there every year.
Yeah.
But people don't always feel comfortable coming up and talking, and doing that outreach is really good. So, yeah, I encourage it, because they're valued people, our veterans.
I have to agree.
Anybody have any comments on the committee? Hi, Don. I mean, you are. You're Don, you're Dave.
Historically, it's only been about $3,000 a year. Is there a current run rate? Do we have one veteran getting sort of a recurring amount now, or?
Actually, if you look at, if I bring my, I meant to bring my budget, which I didn't do. Oh, yes, I do, I'm sorry. It has been running this year higher than that. We have 2 people participating, and you can't, and given what their participation has been, that's what drove the budget for 2015. It's actually, I believe you might very well have to ask for a transfer request, because we'll be...
For 14.
For 14, right.
It's already been done.
It's already been done, okay, so we'll be seeing that soon, because they're already going to be over budget in 2014. And,
Just because of that big hit we took.
right,
Right.
right. So we really have to anticipate that it's going to stay as it was. We're not, when Julie met with, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think when you met with Jim, you know, you looked at it without that one big amount that came in to see how it was running for these two folks. Do you have to assume that they're going to be on? Or if they were continuing on in 15, how much that would be a month?
So if the two people currently being helped were to continue to be helped at the same level,
Right,
it would be around
About $1,000.
12,000. It'd be
$1,000 a
around
month,
1,000 a month.
yeah.
Okay.
So they're about $500 each, I think that's how is that how the thinking went, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah. And
But it
I,
all goes on how much their costs are.
yeah, and it varies,
Yeah, I
you know,
understand.
from
Yeah.
from month to month it can vary because they submit, but we're quite a bit under and just given, if we anticipate these two folks staying on this.
When things are more uncertain, there is a tendency to build in more slack. And one shouldn't do that because you're looking at the whole town-wide budget and all those uncertainties will sort of even out.
Yes, I have heard that. I read it. I think in this case, if we can just talk about the veterans'
Yeah.
budget, is that this has pretty much proved out to be what it
Right,
is.
yeah.
And so, you know, we're dealing with two people. We don't want to anticipate that they're better or they're worse,
Yeah, yeah.
that we have more or less people.
I'm fine with
Okay, good.
a realistic current run rate.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Thank you, thanks, Jim, for coming in. Feel better. Did you have I mean, I don't have a transfer request for you.
No, I sent that to Linda, I think. I
Yeah,
think I did, but that's been a while.
I thought that was handled.
I haven't
It's
seen
like
anything.
12, 24, under,
We haven't-
Could you follow up with her, because I don't think we've gotten it.
I'll check with her tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, if you could, that would be great.
I
We can
think
take
I
care of
have
it.
since last week's.
There wouldn't be a need for you to come back to the meeting for the transfer request if you can follow
Okay,
up.
but
with her.
I'll get in contact with her.
Okay.
Just in, I'm sorry, but just in glancing at Jim's budget, I'm not seeing anything in here that would cover the continuation of the Veterans Day breakfast. Has that been discussed?
You know, it hasn't. I kind of didn't think that was in his budget. Where
Well, it
did
was
you
covered
get
under the 275th last year.
Okay.
It would have to be covered somewhere this year. I mean, for FY '15.
Right, who's got the figures on that?
Who runs that?
Well, who ran it last year was the
Well, the
275th.
275th ran it, but I mean, Jim would run it with some help from Linda and myself and others.
Okay, well,
Linda probably has most of the details on that. She was sort of the secretary of the committee as well as being town secretary.
275th. It's not appearing anywhere in any of your budgets.
No.
No, okay.
I don't think there were many town-related expenses. Well, you were on the committee.
Yeah, I was.
Everything was donated.
It was pretty much all
Yeah.
donated, so let's,
Yeah, I mean,
so,
If it's a small amount of money, I would be willing to cover it under one of the line items in my budget, say purchase of services or something
Okay.
like that. I just
I'll
wanted
check
to make
with
sure
you.
it didn't get overlooked all
it
over.
has, I think, at this
Because
point.
it is
so
something we should be following up on.
I'll do that with her. Okay. Will do.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think so. Let me know what you find out. I'll ask Linda when I call.
Good, that would be great.
Okay?
Thanks very much, that's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for all the work you do. Hi, John Menser is here. Again. And it probably won't be the last time this year.
Good evening, everyone.
Thanks for coming in.
The last time we met, we discussed several capital equipment requests that I had submitted, one of them being for new rescue equipment, which has been in my capital plan, a 5-year plan for the last several years. We discussed that capital equipment request, but there are a few twists that I'd like to discuss with you tonight that have happened since the concept of that capital request was put in place. And that is that the capital equipment request is for new rescue equipment. And one of the prime components of that is the Jaws of Life. which is used quite often in motor vehicle accidents to extricate a patient from a mangled vehicle. So it's important equipment that we have had and will continue to need. That jaws of life, there are a number of different components. There is a spreader which pushes them apart. There's a set of cutters, and there's a ram, and there's a power unit, since currently they're hydraulically operated. Since I did this capital equipment request, the cutter units, the one that cuts the metal, has failed. We took it to the manufacturer's repair representative. They looked at it and they determined that due to the age of that cutter unit, it can't be repaired. So it's basically, it's no good. We do have a loaner set right now, which we have for some indeterminate amount of time. We'll need to go back to the manufacturer at some point. So I'm here tonight to discuss a possible transfer to cover the cost of a replacement set of cutters, so we can have that full capability back and return the borrowed ones. In our discussion last time, I'd given you this presentation, which has some useful information in it for the discussion tonight.
Is it the same as?
It's the same.
I
don't
have
know.
that.
I was just about to say,
John, do you have any?
I did bring one copy for the audience.
Thank you.
The important information for tonight is on the bottom of page 2, under the other considerations. And basically there, I state what the problem is, and basically say that there are a number of different options that we could pursue this evening. Which basically be either purchasing one type of a used set of cutters or one type of a brand new set of cutters. We could purchase the loaner set that we have right now for $2,500, which is the cheapest cost option, but it also is probably not really the best idea, just because those cutters are so old that they're really not up to the capability that we really need for today's vehicles. They're as a loaner set, they're better than nothing right now, but I wouldn't want to have them, in service on the fire trucks long term. Second option would be to purchase a newer set of cutters, but still used, for $4,000, which I would kind of look at as an interim kind of purchase to get us through this period until we could purchase something more up-to-date, more current technology for longer term use. And then the last two options would be to purchase brand new cutters, either a hydraulic version or a battery operated version. What I would recommend, just looking at the cost as well as what the long-term benefit to the town is going to be and what the long-term need is, I would recommend one of two things: either to purchase the brand new pair of the hydraulic cutters, which is the last option, which is the $11,000 option. That would certainly take care of the problem we have right now about getting the capability back. It would be the best long-term solution where it moves us into the fully capable set of cutters. It solves it has a lot of advantages that it solves, problems that will solve, in that it, as it's being value operated, we really get rid of the power unit we had before. We get rid of all the cumbersome hoses. It takes less storage space, less manpower to move around, much easier to operate at an accident scene, and it will give us the capability that we need for today's vehicles. From that, functionally it's the best option, although it is the highest cost. The next possible solution I would propose would be to purchase the used set of what I call the medium technology cutters, which, as I said, would be kind of an interim solution until either the capital equipment request, made it to town meeting and was approved, or, as I discussed last time, we also have put in for a federal grant, which possibly could provide money for a replacement set of cutters, although that's a final solution, a permanent solution to the cutters. Although it's somewhat ambiguous in speaking with the government in terms of if we were to buy a set of cutters now, but then were awarded the grant in the future, would we still be able to use the money for the cutters to buy the permanent replacement set? And the initial answer is no, but I think it's like with a lot of other things, you call 10 times, you get 10 different answers, but we have investigated that somewhat, that's what we found out so far. So basically, I'm here tonight to kind of discuss perhaps those two issues, or two options with you, just to see what might be the best direction for the town to go in.
So just off, I think that the last time you were here, we did not, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did not discuss anything capital. I'm not sure we talked about the grant. Can you just tell us a little bit about this grant and how much it's for, when you might be hearing about it, etc.? Get in here.
I believe I covered that. It's just so many meetings, it's hard to tell these days.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the total dollar figure of the grant was, but basically the
So the
grant.
micro grant, is it the micro grant?
Yes.
So it's less than 25,000 and gets
Yes.
expedited and preferential approval. Oh, I had applied for 2013 federal assistance grant, micro grant, less than $25,000. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that, let's just, if you're saying the replacement of the Jaws of Life package is 34, the cutters are just one piece of the package, and that's
Correct,
11.
but there's some other items included in that micro.
Right, right, so I was thinking that could be 11 and 25 is.
Are you talking about the 47,000?
No, I'm just talking about the replacement of Jaws of Life, 34,000, it's the first item
Just
up there.
that?
And so,
And that's what the grant's for?
The grant will be for a set of cutters, since that's our priority. And one thing that the grant will look favorable on, as well as some other equipment, the rescue struts, as well as some replacement equipment.
and when do you hear, fall of 2014?
Worst case, it's one of the issues with the grant. They start awarding until they run out of money, so there's no firm date that you get a yes or no answer by.
And do you, having an
Although, as I
idea where
said-
we stand on,
I do know that some departments have received letters saying that they were denied. We haven't yet, so,
okay.
but, what the chances are, it's really difficult to tell.
Okay, so, then I just have one other question, and then I'll open up for discussion. I saw that, I think it was last week, that there was an accident on 495, and somebody was stuck in the vehicle. I didn't know if it was last week or the week before. I meant to get it out of the Clinton.
There was an accident on Waterpot Cove Road. where the
Right. Did you
Jaws of
have to
Life-
use the Jaws of Life?
Yes, we
And
did.
which ones did you use?
We used the spreaders as well as the cutters.
The cutters that you had that,
Yes.
and that was an older car? Is that why you were able to do it? I hope the fellow, whoever was hurt, is fine. I want to just ask about the technical way you happened to get to him, but.
We had some issues in using those cutters.
You did,
yes.
okay, that's what I wanted to try and see, because that was a case cutters were necessary, and
Correct.
how did the cutters, these borrowed cutters work, is the question.
As I said, we had some issues. We had to revise it. We tried one particular approach. The cutters didn't work well, so we had to go to Plan B, which took additional time and effort.
Okay. So, we'll go ahead and open up to the committee and thoughts. Sasha, why don't we start with you?
Okay. So I just want to make sure this is the picture of what you currently
That is correct,
have?
yes.
Okay. And how often would you say you use the cutters on a yearly basis? For this whole unit, I guess?
Mhm. Well, we go to a fair number of motor vehicle accidents in a year. Not every accident we go to requires the use of the Jaws of Life. I'd say probably on average, maybe 25%, maybe 30% of the accidents we use the Jaws of Life.
All right, Bob,
Okay,
you have
so
some-
if you got if you got the $11,000 cutters now, would you be reducing your article by $11,000?
That would be a permanent solution to the problem.
And you said your second choice was your medium technology here. Why are you choosing that instead of the hydraulic current technology?
Just because if we bought the new set of the current technology hydraulic cutters, I mean, basically that would kind of lock us into staying in the hydraulically operated
Okay.
tool set, whereas one of the things that we would like to do at some point would be to make the step into the battery operated ones, which perform just as well but have a lot of other advantages.
So the hydraulic ones require a power supply.
Correct.
And do you use that power supply for anything else?
It's used for all the different components of the Jaws of Life, but that's its only use.
Okay.
It runs the
So if you-
cutters, the spreaders.
Okay. And with the battery operated one, just on my experience the past few weeks, how does battery operated Jaws of Life behave in cold weather?
There's no problem that I'm aware of.
Okay. All
I
right.
can-
Because I guess they're kept warm until they're actually.
Yeah, the batteries be stored on
All right.
the apparatus in the station.
Okay.
If you were, I think we had this discussion before on some other things that you had applied for a grant and then had an article. So if you were to not have the grant before town meeting, have the article approved, got the grant, they would not give you the money, or what would happen at that point? Would you just not get the grant? If it's approved at town meeting, then it's just like saying goodbye to the grant, right? You can't use it for something else.
If we had something else that would be a related use that we could justify the need for, we could certainly petition to be able to purchase that. But that would be up to, approval by, the administrator of the grant.
If you got this money as an article, though, you're not required to spend it in the fiscal year. So even though it's authorized, if you haven't made the purchase yet, could you still use the grant money?
The answer is yes.
I would say yes.
Okay.
I mean, once you purchase it, you kind of...
Yeah, so that would be the way to go on something like that. Okay.
My question would be, would the manufacturer do you believe that you'll be able to use the loaned tool between now and the end of June?
I would probably say no. Plus also, I would be concerned that the loaner unit are very old and they're not really the capability that I think the town really should have, even through the end of June timeframe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable supporting, listen, everybody likes nice, new, shiny things. But nice, new, shiny things cost money.
Absolutely, I agree.
I think there's a viable alternative here. I was originally leaning towards doing nothing now. We would letting you use the borrowed pair until this can be properly addressed at town meeting. I guess my second preference would be to go with a cheaper alternative that seems to be, I don't want to use the words just as good, but we'll get the job done. But I'm a little bit uncomfortable, and I know that it's because of something that has broken, but I'm a little uncomfortable fronting advisory reserve money in the 14 fiscal year for essentially what amounts to a capital request in the 15 fiscal year.
And we have 80, just to let you know, we have 84,000. I don't know what, I don't think we've spent anything in January, but 84,000 in...
what's the life of a battery? 7 years? Or the life of one of these batteries, and do you need a second? I mean, everything I have, I always have a backup battery, and I would imagine you'd have to purchase
Each unit comes with 2 batteries.
Comes with 2?
A charger and a charger,
It does come with 2.
as well as an AC adapter. If the battery was to fail, you would still be able to run it off of a generator.
So the 7 years, a useful life, the 7 years, is that,
Minimum 7 years. That's gonna depend really on car technology, how that changes.
and that's based on so many uses, I would imagine, doesn't matter what kind of car it is, or,
Absolutely, yes. Mhm.
So
A
they're
lot of
both
this mechanical
7 years.
stuff really needs to be used in order to maintain its functionality. If it sits around too long, too much, it degrades more than if it's used. So,
Well, I think the biggest thing that is gonna affect the useful life is not that the equipment wears out, but just because it just becomes obsolete because of new advances. And
do you have more questions, Connie?
No.
What's the lead time on these?
They're all fairly short. You could have this resolved in several weeks.
So the argument could be made to use what you have until they decide to take it back. And then if you're in deep water at that point, you could come back here and you'd only be out a couple of weeks without Jaws of Life, or Cutter, rather.
well, does
I mean,
a
the cons-
neighboring town have one?
Pardon me?
Does our neighboring town, if we don't have it, they take it back, you could still have access to one, right?
We would call mutual aid in, yes, we'd
Yeah,
have
but
to.
there's, another
But that-
15 or half, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
until you-
Yeah, this is pretty much, these are pretty
Right.
desperate kind of situations if you're stuck in it.
Well, I would hate for him to, they'd call it back and then with
Yeah.
that train of thought,
Yeah,
come here and you could be sitting at this table and need the jaws of life.
Right, but to me, there's a difference between a 4-week lead time and a 12-week lead time.
Okay.
If the manufacturer was under the impression that you were gonna buy a whole suite of products on July 1st, would they give you a better loaner today?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Yeah, he couldn't make that kind of commitment either.
No, I'm just, did you ask?
I would.
So we can, yes.
That might be an alternative here, that hey, we're kind of strapped for money right now, we're gonna put through an article at town meeting that we hope is gonna be approved,
Yeah.
and in the meantime, you gotta give us something that's more functional than what we have. If that's an alternative, then that's, to me, seems
that's a,
perfect
yeah, that's a good one.
alternative.
Sounds like it. How's that sound?
Sounds fine, so they investigate that. My only concern is that, in my discussions with capital, and I might have mentioned it with you also, that I define my priorities for the true capital requests as the new apparatus being first priority, the rescue equipment being second, and that if the town was to proceed with a new apparatus, that I would consider holding off the rescue equipment till next year. Although with this solution, we're kind of putting ourselves in a situation where
Well, it's a little troubling. It sounds to me a little troubling because if these jaws of life need to be, if we need to have them in order to be safe now, how can, if we did nothing, how can that priority be
Put
number
off.
2?
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems a little strange to me.
well, I mean, it would be nice to have them both priority number ones, but
Yeah, but it seems, I guess if I were prioritizing, I might do it differently, but I'm not running the department. So can we just, we don't have a transfer request, just can we get a feel for where people are on this?
So, just can I interject for one
Yeah.
second? So this is just to take our temperature for a formal transfer request that's...
I have a
to be
request ready to go without a dollar amount filled in. If we were ready to make a decision tonight, that if it needs to wait, then
Can I just wrestle with the
I'm with
human
you.
life element?
I do too.
But,
I do too. Do you have a, Connie, you have a?
No, I kind of feel the way Randy does. I think that you have more bargaining power than maybe you think you do in getting a better set by going to the manufacturer that has loaned us the ones that we have presently, and you can feel them out. I mean, they're working right now, right?
Yeah, but
They're not well.
They
They're not well.
They didn't work efficiently the last time.
But I'm sorry,
So the
but-
lead time, what, is maybe a week?
And I'm
No,
not a
that's all I'm thinking, if
firefighter
it
and
goes.
I'm not an engineer, but how do we know that a brand-new set of cutters was, I'm saying all applications and uses are different. There's no way to tell that the reason you had difficulty was because of an old set of cutters or just because of the circumstance that existed at the scene that particular night. Tell me that I'm crazy. You're
You can say-
blaming it right now on the cutters being non-functional. I don't know, if you had a brand-new shiny set of cutters, that particular environment, that particular night, you might have had trouble with the way the metal was situated with a brand-new set of cutters. I necessarily don't know that it was linked to the old cutters.
Well, I mean, certainly, I can say that the newer cutters are designed to work more effectively, more efficiently than the loaner set we have right now. So yes, anything could happen, but certainly you would have much less of a probability of having the same or different types of issues with a new set of cutters versus the loaner set we have right now.
Okay, do you have a feeling, are you supporting any of the different options? Bob, Stasha?
Let me just run this by you because I want to make sure I've got it right. So there was 112, over the last 4 years, 112 motor vehicle accident calls. And so that averaged out to about 30. And then 25% of that would be less than 10. So I'm looking at maybe...
One a month.
Yeah, one a month. And if that was my kid in that car, stuck in that car, once a month, I was put in that position as a firefighter, like, are my jaws of life gonna work? I would want some, at least reliable option. He's saying it's not reliable, and I'm not an engineer either, but he's the guy out there in the field that's the expert at this. I would wanna at least get something that worked, I guess, you know, so I would tend to want to do something.
Well, let me ask the committee, what do you think should be done if the article gets turned down at town meeting?
Well, it becomes a little bit more difficult probably, because then, you know, this sort of fits into our reserve requirement, you know, something that we unanticipated.
But it's not unanticipated now.
It's not unanticipated in fiscal 15, though.
No, that's what I'm saying, it wouldn't work then.
Yeah,
And now it works, and it doesn't work then, so we couldn't probably do it through the
Yeah.
reserve. It works now, so I'll just, my feeling is that we should do the $4,000 option. It's not, you know, you can't put a dollar price on somebody's life. The $2,500 to me is just a throwaway of $2,500.
Correct.
The $11,000 seems too expensive, and you know, the $4,000 makes some sense. And I think if you can ask the question that Randy has and come back to us next week and let us know, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know how anybody else feels about it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to ask that last question was because I, too, am uncomfortable with having something that the chief is deemed to be substandard.
Yeah.
Between now and the end.
It's generally a life and death situation in that case.
Okay, but your question was just, can he keep what he has?
No.
No.
The question
No.
was, if he
No.
talked to the dealer and said, it is very likely that I get funds on July 1st to buy $40,000 worth of Jaws of Life equipment from you, will you give me a better loaner between now and June 30th?
I can't promise you anything.
Right.
I mean, they know, they're municipal, they go to
And
municipality
see
all
if
the
that,
time.
if that lights a fire, and if we can get a like-new loaner between now and when funding becomes available at ATM, then that's a better alternative than what we have now.
Okay, but
If that's
that brings
not the case, then I will be more sympathetic towards funding
then it's-
in a week.
But let me go back. Let's say we get a better loaner.
Yeah.
What happens in
If it
fiscal
doesn't pass,
15?
that is a unforeseen.
That's the town making that decision, I think.
But then we're without Jaws of Life.
And if the town votes to be without it, and with an understanding, your presentation, with an understanding of what the purpose of, and putting it in terms of once a month, you know, you're out there saving somebody, you know, getting somebody out of a vehicle and saving them, and they're, usually it's a pretty bad accident, then that's up to the town, if the town makes that choice.
But the one snafu with that is, if we do that, we are almost certainly committing to support that article with cash funding right now.
Right now, yeah.
Because if we're not, and we strap it with a borrowing, God forbid, or some other alternative source of funding, then we almost shoot the article down before it even has a chance. So we're almost forcing this decision tonight, or next week, or whenever, forces our hand on supporting that article or not with free cash funding.
So I would encourage everybody to think about it between now and next week. You've got, you know what it is. We haven't seen the wording of the article. Capital hasn't come. They're coming next week. I think it's it's a good opportunity to give some thought as to where you want to be on it. Because if, yeah, that's right, if we're not going to support it, then
Then we have no choice.
I can tell you right now, it's not my position, so.
No, we have to.
But we can,
it would
we've
be
discussed it as a
doing a
committee.
disservice if we then voted that article, that, we recommended it to be disapproved.
Right.
I mean, that.
No, it's
I'm just
a good
saying
point.
you have to
That would be a
think
very
about all those
inconsistent
things.
thing
Yeah.
to do. Does that sound like something that we can go with?
To take a week to research more, yes.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I don't think there'll be any issue in a week, but, I mean, just keep in mind that, I mean, the $400 option might go away at some point. Another town could come in, next week and say, I want to buy those cutters.
I'll put your dibs on it. Do something with it.
Well, actually, if it's any consolation to you, I think if we were gonna buy some, I would just personally prefer to
Buy
buy
the
the
11,000.
11,000, because if that's what we're gonna get anyway, then we've wasted $4,000.
Well, I don't think we've wasted necessarily second, but it just worries me. We have 84, that would bring us down to 75, and here we're only, we have a long time
Yeah.
to be dealing with in our reserve. That's my only concern.
The 11s are the ones, the 11,000 is the one that's in the article.
Yeah, the article, right.
I would concur that if you don't get a response, then my preference would be to buy the new.
11,000.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. Well, I'll think about it.
We still want you to ask, though, even though you know that.
You never know from week to week with us,
Yeah.
I like to keep you guessing. Okay?
Yeah,
Sound
I mean,
good?
we just
I would do
basically
that.
lost our leverage with you to some extent, but if you can make still a good faith effort.
No, I understand your concern.
Also,
It's a valid question.
because I think what it comes down to, that if you probably,
For this one,
we
just because it's got-
would want you to wait to do the purchase. That's something else to keep in mind until you find out what's going to happen with the grant. Because if you don't expend the money, then you can get the grant and still spend it, and it just won't be spent.
Yes, it's just
I know we've been through this before. That's August. I don't know.
I do have one question.
Sure.
What is it exactly different besides the hoses and the unit, the power unit, between the $6,400 one and the $11,000 one? Or it's cutting about
$2,400, $4,000.
$6,400.
No, 4,000.
If we were to buy the
The
new
current
set.
technology and the,
I thought we were buying 4,000. It was 4,000.
oh, this is an old one?
Purchase of new technology, $4,000. New technology cutter. The other one is 11,000.
Well,
there's a
I have this. When did this come
Where?
out?
Or maybe I can take the newest one.
In what I passed out tonight, I just added in that other option of,
I asked him, was this,
basically,
there's a fourth.
rather than, I just added some.
This is a newer one. This is,
Yeah.
no, this is
Oh,
an
so
old
then,
one. This
I
is
didn't
the new
realize,
one.
and I asked you if it was, I'm sorry. Oh, this one says Beverly Willis. So there's a
So the
four
I do
technologies.
this.
Oh.
I do
Which one
that.
are you,
I don't
the
have-
medium?
This is the first
Because
choice.
he added
This
this
medium
option.
is the
Second choice, okay.
And that's why I
Okay, sorry, so 4,000 second,
it's
And then-
$5 grand. It's almost
three and
two.
four or something?
I just included in the option of the new hydraulic cutters, just so you would have that information.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it, because as I said, it locks us into that.
Yeah.
Well, it does for 7 years. After
It's
7
quick,
years, we buy what we want again.
Yes, I wondered what percent of the Jaws of Life usage are on 495 versus in the rest of the town?
I don't have a firm figure on that. It would just be an estimate that would, I do know that we go to 495 often, and the accidents there tend to be worse.
Right, higher
Because of the higher
speed,
speeds.
I mentioned this before, and I know you don't have time for a big discussion tonight, but
Yeah.
it seems to me the state ought to have the responsibility for 495 rather than us, and I wonder if if we're mostly using the jaws of life on 495, if we shouldn't pursue some kind of state funding or reimbursement.
We could certainly look into it. I mean, my guess would be that, the state probably would not
In your
feel that.
grant proposal, do you mention that we cover a good stretch of
We do,
495?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And we're required by law to do that.
If it happens within
Bolton?
our town, yes.
There's not a state fire department. I mean,
Yeah.
they're-
And we're-
Who are they gonna call, David?
I would think the state police ought to maintain that capability themselves.
Well, I think, anyway, let's deal with what we know now, and what we know now is that we live in Bolton, we have certain,
It'd be nice to know, though.
well, we can certainly pursue it, but I think for this question, what we know now-
That's probably not an easy answer to get. That's kind of a long-term.
Yeah,
Well,
that's something.
I guess the other way of answering this, do all towns respond to 495, or are there some towns that do not?
If a town has, typically, if a town has a portion of a highway that goes through its town.
All towns are responsible for their portion of a state highway.
Chief,
Okay.
does the state police have a fire department?
Not that I'm aware of.
Or an ambulance?
Do the state cruisers carry around the jaws of life in their trunk?
No, they don't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All I need
Thanks, we'll see you next week. I just called Linda and she'll
I
send
will.
you. Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Conservation, come on down. So, we've got a new face, I just made a little joke about that. So we have Carol Dunbar and Brian
Therapy?
Therapy. Well, when you have a name like Abdalian, it shouldn't take that long. And I just made a joke, it wasn't probably all that funny. Last year, when Carol came, you had Mark Sprague with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and so now Mark is the selectman. I'm just saying.
Oh, that's what you meant by that.
That's what I meant by that, yeah.
Well,
I thought
it's
that was-
nice to have different members come and meet everybody else. Because I haven't met you today.
Sasha, nice to meet you.
If you don't behave, the same can happen.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like, I should just
Yeah,
leave
okay.
now.
Right, and be safer.
Uh-huh.
Be safer in New York, okay. So, they'll all have our names out in front, and are you, Carol's saying that you're a new member of Conservation
Yeah.
Commission?
When did they become a voting member?
Yeah, last spring,
Yeah.
yeah. And Brian actually came in, we started having associate members because we were having such a difficult time getting full-time members.
I remember that.
He didn't have that long a period where we then needed another person, so it did work as a step-in, and actually, another person has just sort of stepped into the same thing. He started as an associate, but we just learned last meeting that we are losing a member, so we need to get back to that again, find another member. So I say that on TV.
Yeah, say it on TV.
Someone who's been vehemently opposed to the Concom reducing membership, I applaud your volunteer effort. Thank you.
Now he's.
We'll see how tonight goes.
Right.
So,
So, yeah, just to begin, just to tell us what's happening this year with the Conservation Commission that's new. I mean, there's so much that's new and something that might, and what's different from last year. But okay, we're looking at 2014, 2015.
yeah. Well, the big thing in our budget that's new is that we're taking out the inspections for the Five Shire Dam. And so the reason for that is because we did complete the design phase and the permitting phase. And we just this past month in January went out to bid to contract that project out. So we're anticipating that we won't need the quarterly inspections into the next fiscal year. That being said, we were also hoping that the contractor could get started on the project possibly sooner than what they've put into their bid timeframe, which is May. So it's going to be close, but I still think that if we have an inspection, which we have the money for right now, soon, that would probably carry us over and get that work done before anyone would claim that we needed another one.
Will you be able to do it in, the May is the next inspection, and you have the,
No, the next
Oh.
inspection is March.
no, okay.
So we will be doing one anyway this spring. And we were actually also able to reduce the amount that we were spending on that because we were using one engineering firm originally, Fuss & O'Neill, and just they're a much larger firm and their costs were higher, even though that's who we were using our phase 2 when we did the initial studies, or not the initial study, but the phase 2 of the study. And when we went to Leonard Engineering to do the final design work, they were also able to do the inspections and at a lower price. So that's helped out. So we will not be spending our whole line out of the purchase of service.
$4,600.
Yeah.
Which you hadn't spent last year either.
Yeah, I think we actually carried over one inspection from the year before and didn't do the 4. We've got them all in enough to satisfy the state.
Yeah, that's what matters, huh?
Yeah.
That's what matters. So it's good to see a line item going away. So, so then the other big news is that you're going to be doing the work on the 5 Shire.
Yes, so we expect to start that hopefully in May at the latest. We are still working on getting our temporary access easements finalized, getting the legal language and the description of where we're coming in, because we're coming in through the town of Berlin, through neighbors' properties that abut to the dam. And while we've had contact with them, both verbally and in writing, until everything's signed, I don't feel like, I have all the commitment yet. And, if something changed where a house was to sell before we get this, in place, it could be a snafu that, somebody could say, oh, I don't agree to that. We're coming in Lancaster Road and going up, I'm forgetting the name because of the state.
Is that
Collins, yes, Don's better remember than me on those things. And then it's a common driveway off of that. So we don't need permission, although I've talked with the town of Berlin, we don't need permission on the road, but we need the owners of the common driveways permission. And then we're crossing over 14 Collins Road, and so we're having a separate agreement with that property owner to come over their personal driveway and over their lawn.
So this is for the trucks and the work and that kind of
This is
thing?
for all the construction equipment.
Yeah.
Have we agreed to remediate their property through sort of as-was?
Right, and so that's what the temporary construction agreement includes. So at this point where I haven't got that finalized with their signatures on it yet, and that just is going to tie to the amounts of money. So our bid came in below what we estimated. So our engineering firm had estimated around $175,000 for the project, and our bid came in at $144,900. However, we also extended our contract with Leonard to oversee the construction. So they'll do all the on-site engineering inspections and make the recommendations on all the, if there's any change orders that are necessary, whether they're appropriate or so forth. So that was, I think I had that in the budget.
So how's that up to 250, so the difference
Yeah, I was gonna
is...
say-
So I think we should be below, around 50-something thousand below, plus we had some money in the phase 2, I think.
Yeah, it was $3,600.
So we might be 60,000 under if we don't have to do very much,
More.
different than what we're anticipating.
It's for next year.
So I guess I am still a little, until I get those contracts signed by the neighbors and know what happens there, I don't
We
want
won't
to.
spend it until next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
you did.
But we're thinking about 50, 60 below what we had estimated. So we had put in a holding article because we didn't know how the bids were going to come in. And in fact, a number of them, like 6 or 7 of them, were either right around the estimated cost or above. So considerable numbers came in above the price. This was, I think, about 20,000 below the next price. How about that?
Yeah. It's just excellent. Okay, so that's the fun stuff. And how long do you think that's going to take? You start in May?
I'm hoping about a month and a half.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty quick. But I've never really overseen this kind of thing, so that's just what I've been told, is that they think it can be a fairly quick project.
And then the state's gone. They're not.
I know our engineers will have to give them certain certification, I'm imagining, the as-built information, and then I'm not sure what the certification project is. since we came under the order from the Office of Dam Safety, every June, we've kind of asked for an extension. I don't think that we'll have to ask for the extension. I think we'll be hopefully submitting the information and concluding it
So
with them.
it's going to be less than an 8-week project?
I've been told it can go pretty fast.
It's amazing.
I think especially if we do it in May, it could be pretty fast, because some of it includes restoration, and getting vegetation on it and doing wetland work. We had hoped to do it in the winter partly because we thought the water table was so low that we didn't think that they'd need to do any pumping. And with the frozen ground condition, we thought it was possible it might have less impact on the neighborhood property. But if we don't, I'm not sure that's going to be able to happen now at the time frame getting the
And the bid
agreements done.
includes the remediation of the access properties?
It does, yes. Yeah, it included screening and returning it to the condition that it was in.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Which is, most of it's lawn, but there is some woodlands. There's a path that we're going to utilize as much as possible.
Okay, very good. So if you want to just walk us through your budget, that would be helpful.
Okay, so the wages only include me at this point still. And then I mentioned the purchase of service. We pretty much leveled everything from what we had asked for and worked up to and into, I'm going to say that with the land maintenance and the land capital improvements, because, as you look back to 13 and 12, we were at a lower amount in those line items. We had, in 2009, we had done a land management plan at Bower Springs. We had started to do some land maintenance work based on the recommendations in that plan. We didn't end up having sufficient funds to do much of it. It kind of, and we were trying to use volunteers. So we came back in, I think it was in 2013, and had proposed a substantial increase. I think we were asking like 12,000 or something like that. And the advisory committee at that time asked us to lower that amount, but if we still needed it in the spring and there was money in the reserve account, that we would be able to come back and ask for more. So we did do that. So we've been using a consultant to help us get on top of the management there, and it's invasive plants, not just the Oriental bittersweet, but there's autumn olive, there's European buckthorn, and there's also some other more specific ones that just more new, there's a newer invasive that we're keeping our eye on, that we're trying to, it's a small area, that hasn't really expanded at this point, but we're trying to get a whole handle on. So we've done a lot of mechanical work. This past December, he did a ton of hydro-axe clearing of invasive plants. Oh, and including, there's one called the Tree of Heaven. I don't know, are you familiar with that?
I saw you.
Oh, yeah.
Carol and I did a walk around Bower Springs, which was
This tree
great.
grows just hugely fast. It sort of almost looks like sumac when it's small, but it grows. It's it's not native, and it just takes over. And we have quite a bit of that in between a couple of the fields, and so we're trying to get rid of that as well. So again, with the mechanical, that's been a lot of equipment operation time, which is expensive. The commission did approve allowing some herbicide treatment, which we didn't end up doing last year. Again, we were kind of monitoring, trying to see if the mechanical was going to be sufficient. They did agree in the upland areas to allow some herbicide treatment, so we're going to start that this spring. And then if it seems, and we may continue that like on the dike in between the two ponds, if it seems like it's not traveling much and not disturbing other vegetation, and we're not as concerned with excessive spray, because it's really just going to be backpack hand spraying and hand painting, that kind of thing. There's a little bit of foliar spray on some of the upland species. Anyway, that's
And that's
sort of
that land maintenance account, 5240, is that
well, what I've done is included, most of that is really in the land capital improvement, because I kind of feel like this is a capital project for the commission, in the sense of that it's something that had lagged, but it's something we took on. The maintenance primarily includes our regular routine mowing, so we also have butternut open space that we mow routinely, and at least in last year's, and I'm hoping to get that spent this year, we have carried $3,000 to get the trees off of the dam on Forbush Mill Road. We had a large tree go down there. And we've been waiting for really the right time to be able to bring in equipment. We don't have enough money to cover bringing in a crane to take the trees off. And so, because of the way the seasons have been with the snow cover, you don't get as much frost in the ground, or when we've had the frost, we haven't had, the tree contractor hasn't been available, so we haven't ended up with the right window yet. And so I'm hoping that this winter we're still going to be able to do that. But there's things like that that happen that, are...
And that falls under your budget, not under tree warden?
No, it's not on the road within the right-of-way, it's on our conservation land. And so in that case, again, it's not a jurisdictional dam, but it is a stone dam, and so our desire is to remove the trees within about 10 feet of the dam, so that we don't have a tree that goes over and then the root ball blow out the whole wall.
So this isn't the Beaver Dam upstream on Fort Bush, this is right by the soccer fields?
Right above the soccer fields.
Okay.
Yep. Now, the Beaver Dam up gradient is on private land.
Okay.
So anyway, so that's sort of what the capital and the land maintenance. So land maintenance has included routine fixing boardwalks, fixing signs, things that are routine maintenance. The capital has also included boundary marking. We have. We really didn't have, until recently, any kind of boundary marking program for our conservation properties as far as where the land ownership is. And what we found and I don't know, well, what we found was that the land that's being gifted as open space from the subdivisions that go through the thought spread process with cluster subdivision, there's a lot of tight development, and the people didn't necessarily know where the open space boundary was. And so we've gone back on some of the old subdivisions, and we hired a person to use a handheld GPS item to identify where the boundary was, because she had fairly good markings because they were, we did Danforth subdivision and the Oaks and Butternut, because the boundaries were pretty easy to find in those, and the as-built information was readily available. We would look at going back. We haven't done Rocky Dundee subdivision. So there's a number of subdivisions that we still haven't done, and including we haven't done some of our land that we purchased. This winter we were notified actually by the state. The state has a Mass GIS department, and we were communicating on a conservation restriction and getting that into their system to show open space, so that they keep track. If you Google open space, on Mass GIS, you'll find all kinds of information about what we already own and that kind of thing. So they like to keep abreast of what we have. Anyway, they somehow were looking at the town, and he contacted me and said, it looks like they have a fairly significant encroachment on from this parcel, and does the town have a policy? And so we're looking into that still. We've had so much snow cover, we haven't gone out there yet to look at the encroachment, but from the field aerial maps, it looks as though there's encroachment. And so, we're hoping that the boundary marking helps so that we don't have
Whose responsibility is it to remediate encroachment? The homeowners?
It's the homeowners.
And then who polices it on a regular basis? It's you guys?
Yes.
With the utilization of this GPS?
Well, we really haven't used the GPS because we don't have one. We use the GPS just for marking the boundaries, and she rented that. And
so is this a physical marking, or it's done on a map, or how
you know what? I thought about bringing one down, but it's a little triangle, and it has a conservation logo on it. Do you have one in here?
I'm wondering if I have stuff in here.
It says Bolton Conservation Boundary. And so what I'm doing right now with Century Mill Estates is I've asked them every time they pull a building permit, or if we're doing work in the new phase and they're going to be doing work adjacent to the open space, if they would put the boundary markers up, because they have the survey people doing work there anyway, so it's pretty easy for them to do that. But again, the old ones, it hasn't happened, and it's not a requirement in the regulations at this point. So
it'd be a good thing to get in there.
yes, we've been.
So there hasn't been any expenditure this year in that account?
Well, you know what, there was. We got a bill just last month. We just paid, actually, the commission just paid it, what did it say, it was like $4,600?
$4,600?
Yeah, about
Oh, okay.
$4,600. So the Henderson Stryker, the consultant that we've been using with all his equipment, he didn't, he's out in the field straight pretty much all summer, fall, and into December. So he really didn't do his billing until January.
Okay.
So we did just get that bill.
We
And-
expect to pay the remainder of the $9,000 between now and June.
Yeah, so I asked him to give me, where we were with, he gave me a whole report on what he had done, and I asked him just to refresh me on what we had left to do. And he thinks he has about another $3,000 to $4,000 worth of work he should be doing based on what he's given us for over the year. And in addition, for next year, he had estimated between $7,000 and $8,000. He and I have not talked about this yet. He said he was having difficulty giving me actual numbers because he feels like we need to evaluate stuff in the field still a little bit more, which we do a couple times during the season when he and I walk through and take a look at, how it's going, what they're doing, do where we need to focus.
And then do you think we're done with
Well,
Bowers
if you
Springs?
don't-
What he
No, that's
has,
not just Bowers Springs. is
well,
it?
no, that is primarily, the big chunk of it is Bowers. What he has told me is that he's hoping that we can be at the point where we can utilize more local people maybe for doing the mowing. And this past year, I had a senior tax rebate program person who was capable of using our brush hog, which is not a piece of equipment that everyone would be able to use, but he's been able to use that up at Bowers Springs and supplement with some additional mowing. He can get in underneath some of the trees, and yeah. So, so going back also to the line item in equipment, I didn't use the equipment line item last year because in part I was really adding it in with the equipment costs for what we were spending up at Bowers. We needed the extra money there, and we didn't buy any new equipment. But typically our equipment line item is either for maintenance of the brush hog, or we have 2 weed whackers. Right now we use the weed whackers over on the Wilder Pond Dam, because it's another dam that, again, is non-jurisdictional, but it needs regular routine maintenance, and it's so narrow that the brush hog, it's a little scary to take that out there because it's such a powerful, piece of equipment. So we've been, again, having people use that and do the clearing the vegetation along that. I'm trying to remember how many years ago. A number of years ago, we did the same project that we want to do on the Forbush Mill Dam. We removed trees, the majority of the trees that had grown up on top of it. The maintenance hadn't happened for years and years and years, and everything was out of control. And it's expensive removing trees, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's just a big expense. The training, it's used here and there at different times depending on who we have for new members and membership. I'm pretty sure last year we were able to get, a couple things happened. One is that we were able to get like a first-time grant from the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions. If you hadn't been to one of their meetings, they put out some grants, and so we were able to utilize that. So we didn't end up having to pay out of our budget from that. They also did some online webinars that were brand new, so some members were able to utilize that. They've also now put a handbook online that we have access to. So, but I know Brian can probably speak to it, the members would like to use it more.
Sure. Yeah. And it's just a question with me, with my schedule, if I hadn't, my schedule would fit, I would be taking the MCAC classes. But I know some people do it at the time, it's just a question of the money and the effort.
So this was really to cover a couple of people taking
Right.
the minimum number of classes. They have a certificate program. Kevin Lord, when he was on the commission, did all the, I want to say 7 or 9 certificate,
8.
is it 8?
Yeah.
Courses that lead you all the way from running a meeting to land management to Wetlands 101, and so they run a variety of courses that way.
But they haven't been being used.
They have been, but last year we didn't have to pay for it out of the budget. We were able to get a grant to, as I said, a first time.
It's usually running about $100, but the people that you had, how about this year? You've just spent, there's just been, through the end of December, $36 spent on training, and I'm just wondering, are you the folks that you were anticipating?
Well, I'm hoping so. The annual meeting's coming up. I know one new member, he has already told me that he's interested in attending that conference. And I said, so we've got it on our agenda because if other people want to go, we can't pay for 2 people to even go to the conference. We don't have that much, really. So we have to figure it out. We're going to pay for him to go to the conference, and maybe there's enough for somebody to take a course, one of the courses. So anyway, that's on our agenda. The conference is at the beginning of March, so we're talking about that next. What else do we have? The vernal pool study is, mostly I've been using that ongoing. We were doing studies with Minuteman Vocational School. That's how it originally, I think, came into the budget. They haven't been out doing their programs more recently, but we've had continued sort of the education process doing the big night activities. And what we found out a couple of years ago is, we really weren't following as many safety precautions as the chief would have liked us to. So we've bought some sandwich boards that are reflector. We bought some reflective vests, so when the volunteers are going out, some cones, some things to kind of help. We have 3 sites that we're trying to cover when the big night comes in the spring, for
That's what they
amphibian migration.
Yeah. Ring Road. Advertising is...
Advertising is primarily legal notices when the commission files their own projects for themselves, so like we have to file under the Wetlands Protection Act and the bylaw as well. So when we do a legal notice, like on the Forbush Mill Road Dam, we have to do a notice of intent application, that kind of thing.
All the others, all the others look good.
You asked me to just mention the Conservation Fund?
Yes, please.
So this $100 is really a really small amount to have in a conservation fund. In fact, when we went to record a quitclaim deed, it was $125 at the registry, so we didn't even have enough to really cover one quitclaim deed.
No, I thought this was the donation that you were making to the Conservation Fund, which has a balance.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. It's not a donation that we were making, but it's money in our budget. We don't have to go back to ask anybody else, necessarily to use. It's there just as a
So this is
quick.
being used for
How much is in the
heating too?
Conservation Fund?
31,000. I think I just asked Julie yesterday. Yeah. So,
Can't you go and cover that $120 versus $100 in your, can't you?
well,
dip
I
into
didn't
your
with the
conservation
25.
fund for that?
I didn't with the 25. I
If
mean,
it
if
got
we
to
had
be
multiple,
$1,000,
if we had multiple projects in a year, and we were having to go to the registry and do that kind of thing. But the purpose of the trust fund is, for Sasha in particular, I don't know who's heard it from here to you before, but, and actually Terry, you weren't on the other year, so, is to have some seed money if there's a project that comes to the town. And whether we need to do appraisals or whether we need to do some planning to see whether or not it makes sense for the town to purchase it, whether, like going back a ways, but when the town purchased the Moen property off of Von Hill Road, initially the Conservation Commission proposed the entire parcel be acquired for conservation purposes. And then it was later discussed, could we get a lot and subdivide a lot out of it, and that would help to pay for some of the costs. In order to do some of that, you need to know whether or not you can get a lot, so you might have to do a wetland delineation, or you might need to do a soil test, So that 31,000 is what we have right now. We had been asking,
$5,000.
well, when I first started, we were asking 10. So it's whittled down to 100.
Remember that?
We
It was
really
10,000.
Check that down
And I
over
think,
years, yeah.
can you remember, I know we had a discussion about trying to keep it at a minimum. Was 30,000 sort of the minimum that, we wouldn't try to
Because, well,
drop
until you
below?
demonstrate
Yeah,
a
you need for it,
drain,
yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to fund
nothing's-
it.
Not that you've not done anything, but
Yeah.
there's nothing that's drawn down that 31,000.
Yeah, well, we did use, I thought we used some of that for the Weatherby conservation restriction.
You may have.
So I think we did draw some down by using that. Again, it wasn't necessarily seed money, but we wanted to lower the price,
Well, We had 35,000 there a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, so we haven't used a ton out of it now either. In fact, last year when I went to write the annual report, we didn't acquire anything.
So
Yeah.
the sentiment of.
And it's partly been because there hasn't been any money to, to try to do that. I mean, we'd like to.
But the sentiment of the
Preserving
committee at the
some more
time
land.
was, we were contributing $5,000-$10,000 to a fund that was growing.
Yes.
And that, until we demonstrated a use for that built-up funds,
Yeah.
that we wouldn't support funding it
Yeah,
anymore.
I think, one of the costs, I mean, it could quickly in one project go
Sure.
away, so like appraisals can cost, if we're gonna do state grants, it can cost anywhere from $7,000 to $8,000 to meet their appraisal requirements, so if you had to do soil testing with that, and you had to do some survey work, it'd be gone.
Gone.
But,
Right,
yes,
okay.
yeah.
So the
And nothing
question is,
looking-
do we
nothing at the
replenish it at 10,000 then? Or do we?
Well, I don't know, we'd have to talk about how we replenish it at that point.
And nothing on the horizon?
There's lots of little things out there, but, we don't have a project that we're bringing to town meeting or that we're negotiating on at the moment.
Can we use the conservation fund to fund Bower Springs improvements, if we so chose?
I don't know, I'd have to find out how that was set up and created. For maintenance?
I mean, I don't know, and again, I know you're cringing at that notion to give up money that you have, but I've been sitting in this chair for 6, 7 years, and I know that there are worthy projects, and they'll come up ad hoc, and we'll deal with them as they come, but if we've had a fund balance that's historically flat, the idea is some of these improvements could be funded out of that fund instead of through the operating budget, and saves the taxpayer a little bit of money, and then as we get land purchase opportunities, we deal with them on an ad hoc basis through advisory reserve transfers or town meeting funding, etc. I mean, just throwing it.
Well, I'd like to talk to the commission a little bit about that and look into when the fund was originally formed, if there's any other, ties to it, contingencies. And it's not a gift fund the same way, but I'm not opposed to that. But, I'd like the memory to continue and stay with
a lot of
happy to do this.
bittersweet.
Yeah, but
It's going away.
You could take that bittersweet and just make wreaths and sell it at Christmas too.
You can't, you really don't want to do that, exactly. You can't be promoting the use of that anywhere.
One more question for me
Yes.
is specifically on Bower Springs. Who controls the rules and regulations there in terms
The
of
Conservation Commission.
dogs on leashes? What's prohibited there right now? Are boats allowed on the body
Well,
of water?
we have rules and regulations posted,
Yep.
and we have amended the rules for the Tom Denny Nature Camp, because they do use the pond for wading, for pond study, and for now kayak usage. And with that, there's a requirement that there's people with lifeguard training and water safety precautions, and they also pay for the water testing to make sure that it's safe for people to be going in it. Otherwise, we do not allow swimming. We do not allow, and I don't know about boats. I don't remember if it says anything about boats, to be honest.
The reason I ask is,
You can't get a boat down there.
well, you could carry a canoe down the tree.
Oh, a canoe.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's
No,
motorboat. You think
or a
it's
kayak or whatever. The reason I ask is this, and believe it or not, I've been asked this a couple times, is the town owns that land. We're spending money to maintain that land. It should be open to liberal use by the townspeople of that land, up to and including, if you want to bring a kayak down there to go fishing, canoeing, etc. It seems to be no dog leash rules down there, right? I mean, I've been down
Well, I
there
think
many
it's supposed to
times.
be like
There's
the
100 dogs
town,
down
the
there
town
running
bylaw is
Yeah.
the only thing that I think covers it, which is supposed to be under voice control.
So I'm just saying, you might want to think about if we're putting money into this property, and it is a beautiful piece of land,
Yeah.
that we give the taxpayers more liberal use of that property.
Yeah, I
With less
don't know that they couldn't use a kayak or canoe. I think the swimming, is more of an issue. And I think some of it also came about when there was a lot more partying that was happening there, so it's, not to say that that doesn't still happen on occasion, and the police could probably tell you even more than I can, but I think that was a major problem at one point in time. And so, and that's what tends to happen, is rules and regulations get developed when there's a problem, and so I don't recall there being anything,
I
but.
think swimming would be an issue there because of the presence of beavers and the disease they
Well,
carry.
and you could be concerned for that, but there has never been a problem with the water quality testing that they've done for the Board of Health,
Okay.
in all these last few years.
And, personally, if it's not a motorized boat,
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no, you could prohibit that. I haven't
Yeah.
seen the sign in
Yeah.
a while.
I don't review.
I don't remember that being a prohibition
Okay.
there, to be honest.
And fishing's allowed there.
Fishing, yep,
so-
fish people, and again,
Well,
I
I've
mean,
fished there, so
people
I'll
do
just
fish
watch.
there a lot, and,
Yeah.
when we've talked about making it some improvements even, we had an Eagle Scout who didn't end up doing a project there, but we had talked about, he'd been interested in doing a dock, and then we were more interested in doing something that would kind of utilize, people are kind of hop skipping and jumping to get out further on a little peninsula, and we thought, it would be better to put some effort into maybe boardwalking that and getting that in better condition. But people fish there a lot, and, we don't have a lot of conflicts, even though there's a potential for a lot
Yeah.
with the horseback riding,
And the
the
dogs.
kids doing cross-country running, at the occasional group permit that, or a site walk that people do. Sometimes, I know people have done mushroom walks there, so it's used a lot, even though it's heavily used by dog walkers and people who, want to bring dogs off leash. We've been pretty fortunate that way. I was gonna just say on the fishing, again, you hope that people aren't gonna be leaving all their string hanging and leaving hooks around, because
Yeah.
that's when you end up getting into those,
Right. Well, the state stocks that too, doesn't it?
I'm not sure that they do anymore. They may have for a long time, but I don't think that they do now. I haven't been told that they do that.
Because it's been on, Bolton has been on the list. I don't know
Yeah,
if they're
I'm
doing that or
thinking,
just for Bushmill or.
Little Pond?
Maybe they were the town beaches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, good.
Okay, then, definitely get up to Barrow Springs and
No, it
enjoy
was
it.
beautiful, beautiful.
The snow should be great for cross-country and snowshoeing.
David?
The land capital improvement line, then you paid 4,600 so far.
Yes,
You think you will use the whole 9,000 this year.
yes,
Eventually, you expect this to taper off,
right.
but not at all next year? You're going to do the same amount this year, or you're going to do the same amount in fiscal 15?
I think, didn't we deal with that you were,
Yeah.
like I think $8,000 next
Yeah,
year.
he gave me an estimate between 7 and 8, and we haven't talked about that yet. So he just wrote that up for me the other day, but I'm not, that could be higher, could be lower, depending on how some of the other treatment work goes.
So at what point would you be deciding what the fiscal 15 amount is going to be? It shows 9,000 on this.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for this year.
We just went over that. She has line of sight into the same kind of work.
And it's
Power
eight, and they're,
Springs.
8,000, but still 7 to 8, but still have to get together to see if, and it's not the only item that's.
Right, I mean, that's-
There are other items in that
Well,
line.
and right now we're putting off doing the boundary work because we don't have any other money to do that, so at this point, there's other capital projects that we probably could consider, but we're kind of trying to get this under
So
control.
I think that Randy's suggestion is really interesting.
Yeah,
To take a
I
look at,
definitely
to take a
look
look
at
at that, because it could allow you to do some stuff that
Yeah.
if nothing is there and
There's nothing, there's no reason to save it. And your track record is you have 30 grand that you haven't used.
Yeah,
You know
that's
you're
good.
saving it for good use, but this is great use. And if a piece of property comes along that's primed to acquire and you need to do an appraisal, then you bring it to us.
Yep.
Or if it's around town meeting, you have a warrant article. There's
see what
other
the commission,
funding, right?
see what the commission
Yeah.
thinks of it, but I think that's a great idea. Will we do that?
Okay, very
Great,
good,
thank you very much for coming in. So now we get to welcome our new town planner, Erica Uriarty. Uriarty?
Correct, yes.
Hey, thank you. And Jonathan Keefe, who's on the
Nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you too. Welcome. So I felt bad writing you the little note saying.
Not at all, no.
Because I know how new, what I do with the departments now is to try and say, okay, these are some of the questions I have, and maybe these are, give you a little heads up what it is to come to committee.
Yeah.
And so, some of and Erica has been here now 2 months?
Yeah, since December.
Yeah, and so, has probably had not all the detail understanding as we had before, but I encourage, I'm glad that you come, and I just, it's we won't be very difficult on you.
Okay, thank
As long as we
you.
have some.
I appreciate
I mean,
that.
I look at the budget just overall, so what we have here are two budgets that you're going to be discussing.
Right.
Board of Appeals, which is a total budget of $650 as it has been
Yeah.
for the last several years. And then Planning Board, which is a budget, 52,693. That's going to be adjusted tonight for Erica's salary, wages, whatever we call it. But, and that's primarily made up of the wage line item and then some other expenditures. So just wanted
Right.
to talk about that.
Sure, I can update you with the wages if you would like.
I got,
Oh, did you get it from Donna?
I got it from Donna. So what,
Okay, sure.
so in the note, the question I had was, did the requested for fiscal year 2015 reflect Erica's salary for the entire year? And Donna came back with a new calculation for the fiscal 15. Erica's working 35 hours a week, just as Jenny did before, and the total salary is $51,197. And that's
That's
wrong?
Might be a typo, yeah,
Oh.
because I talked to Donna this
Oh,
morning.
okay.
She gave me a note, it's actually 50,196.88. I think she
Oh,
just
she-
added in that
oh,
one.
she gave you an extra $1,000.
She did.
Oh,
Yeah.
50,000.
I have to take it away.
Should've been mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's what I have on the spreadsheet.
You know, and actually, I thought Linda had sent you something,
No.
like the new number, or
It's in the packet there.
Yeah, the
Oh, with the packet.
Yeah.
You're only,
Oh.
it's okay, you're only the chairman.
You said that now twice. I didn't look. I didn't put that on. So you're already on top of this, kiddo, right?
I haven't gotten to her yet.
Okay. So
Wages.
that'll be wages, and you'll.
Did we
So
agree
what
to
package
a,
did you?
I don't know.
not disrespect, why is the salary not a round, in the first year, why is it not a round number?
Why would it be?
I don't know.
It makes a certain amount per hour.
Remember,
Makes it have an
remember
hourly
Cynthia,
rate.
Right.
Cynthia Bradbury had the same issue where the
Yeah,
week,
okay.
the
Oh,
year
yeah.
ends on a Tuesday or
Okay.
something like that, so you gotta
Okay.
split the week.
I understand how it gets
And-
disjointed over time, Donald, but I'm asking on year one, why it's not $50,000 even?
Well, it's actually here too.
Salary.
It's here too, and
Okay.
see, she gets an hourly
The wage
rate.
schedule doesn't go like that.
Understood, thank you. Just asking.
It would be nice though, wouldn't it, if we could do
Yeah,
all
we all have
round
round numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
My life being wonderful.
Round up to the nearest 10,000, I say.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Okay, so that
That's the
talks about wages.
Yeah. so-
Purchase, so we're dealing first with 175, which is planning board.
Right. So most of these budgets are basically, because I am new to the position, we're basically carrying over what was set for 2014. Granted, if you look at what's been spent so far in 2014, it's not a lot, but I kind of consider that a transitional year because we changed planners and then there wasn't a planner for a couple of months. So being new to the position, I would like to keep the budgets as they were set moving forward, and then by next year, I think I'll have a better understanding of what bills have been paid, and I can maybe fine tune it at that point. But, so moving forward, purchases of service, we had set that at $2,000, and I think that actually was reduced in 2013 from $3,000. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that covers, but the line items that I think it covers includes acquiring engineering services for planning board if needed, if that falls outside of what the applicant would pay for. And then along with, I looked back in 2013 and there were some bills paid that had to do with like the mobility committee. So I think it's moving or fostering some of the initiatives forward, which could be mobility or like the wayfinding. So that's purchases of service. Then we have $385 for advertising, and that's really just to put out the legal notices. So, and I think that allots for like 8 hearings or something like that.
Okay.
Next line item are supplies. I've done an inventory of my office, and basically I've come up with a bunch of things that in 2015 I'll need to replenish, like for example, ink cartridges for my printer, easy peel labels for a butter, sending out letters to a butters. I'm really, it's kind of pathetic, but I have like 2 pens in my office at this point, so I need to buy a box of pens.
Steal from the account.
It seems so. Last year, I think that there was always a little bit of theft, and we actually increased that line item, $300 because there was a lot of borrowing going on, so it was difficult to find. So we encourage departments to be responsible for their own supplies.
Okay, it seems silly, but I was like, I need to put $7 in here for a box of pens.
Erica, so who pays for ink for the large blotter?
That's a good question. I don't know if that comes out of Gary's budget.
That comes out of Gary's budget.
Okay,
You
yeah.
will see that as a detail when we talk to Gary.
Okay. And then also for supplies like file folders, I'm starting some new filing cabinets for my own purposes. So I would like to buy some new folders for that. And then looking back, Jenny had purchased iTunes cards during the course of the year for buying apps for the iPad. For example, I know it seems sort of silly, but for example, we're trying to figure out how to do mapping for trails and sidewalks in town, and this is sort of going along with what Carol's been doing too. So as a volunteer type of thing, if we're out in the field and we have an opportunity to track some of these trails, that's what, like, we'd be downloading some apps to do that kind of thing. So that would be, so I'd put in $25 for that. And I think in total for supplies, we have $600.
And does that look like it works with your,
The numbers aren't quite on point, but I figured there's probably things that I'm missing just because I'm new. I'm sure something's gonna come down the road that I didn't anticipate. $600 doesn't seem like a lot, but we can work on that.
I think Jenny always, when I was watching last year, she always got the award for the least supplies.
Well, there was a joke about how she was always stealing things
Yes.
from Linda.
She was
Linda's not here anymore. It's
resourceful,
not
as
at our
you call
meetings,
it.
so she's
Right.
yeah, very resourceful.
And then the next line item are the dues, which is pretty straightforward. I think the only dues at this point that I think I'll be needing to pay are for the American Planning Association. There's one for the national and then one for the chapter. So that's set at $400. And then the last line item are for meetings, and we have that set at $600. And from what I can tell, what Jenny had attended in the past and what I would like to attend in the future as well, there's a registration fee for the Southern New England APA Regional Conference. This year it's going to be held in Rhode Island in October. So that's like over $200 just to attend that. It's a 2-day seminar. Then there's the MMA trade show, which will be one day in 2015. That's $150. And then I would like to set aside some money just to attend various workshops and seminars as they come up, just to continue education, that kind of thing. So that covers the $600 there. Now, the one thing that I didn't include in the meetings, and I was hoping to maybe start a new line item for, the one thing that I saw missing was there's nothing about mileage, so in-state travel. I was hoping maybe we could set a separate line item. I think it'd be easier to be able to track mileage that way, rather than, I think Jenny in the past was just putting it under her meetings. And because we don't have a budget at this point for the in-state travel, what I would like to do, because I'm not totally confident of the purchase of services, I figured out mileage for attending all of those meetings, including, which I did talk about previously, are the MAGIC meetings. There's 9 meetings for fiscal year 2015. So with that all said, total mileage, I need about $600. So I would like to take that from the purchase of services and then create a $600 budget for in-state travel.
So your purchase of services, you're proposing would be $1,400 and then
Exactly.
and then $600
I think that's fair.
for in-state travel.
Yeah.
Which I think that makes more sense. It didn't seem like you're going to need that $2,000 going forward.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how she managed to get by without having that. If your in-state travel is $600.
Well, looking
Underspent.
back,
I mean, it's all within the same,
No, but she didn't have enough left.
No.
Oh, unless she was taking from purchase of services. Yeah,
she
might
very
have.
well.
Yeah.
The one thing I didn't mention in terms of that travel that I had included, besides going to those meetings, site visits. So doing different site visits, that will be covered under that as well. And I kind of just I looked back, she didn't have much for 2014, but I looked back to 2013 and I kind of just took a total of what she did for mileage and site visits, and I took slightly less than that and said, okay.
Well, I'm also not sure if you're aware, we have a fantastic town car.
Don't confuse her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't do that.
But see, I know Carol
She
thinks
thinks
that.
you're
She loves
serious.
it.
We wanted to stay for a little while. All right, we'll talk to you about the town car.
I already
next
talked to Linda about that, and Linda was like,
The brakes have been fixed, from what I understand.
That's good.
Also,
I heard something with recall too, I'm not sure.
One question for me is, in your contract, do you have, we've seen contracts that have specific amounts allocated for training and...
just have a contract.
Okay. Well, thank you for the answer.
Okay. Any, so I think that's fair, you know, I'm glad to see that change in the purchasing services, because that probably doesn't look like it's been used, that line item, and if you can better track your mileage, I think that would be a good thing to do, so we'll just make that change. And any discussion on this budget?
No.
Okay. But tying in, just as long as we're talking about meeting expense, so if you tie into the Board of Appeals, what I got confused with watching last year's meeting was what the meeting expense is used for in the Board of Appeals. It seemed to me what Jenny said was that pretty much she, takes some meeting expense from, she uses both of these for meeting expenses.
okay.
But it would, if this is all Jenny's, I'm just wondering if it's more properly.
I agree with
Yeah,
you, I saw
kind of-
that in your
Yeah, I know,
comments.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it should just be combined and.
So do you need that extra 450, or are you covered with the $600?
I would like to keep it just because there was a reason for why she set it to that amount, and, I would like to have a year to kind of.
Well, very wishful thinking.
Okay.
There was
Okay.
reasons for certain things and some built-in cushion for others.
Okay.
I think you've done a fantastic job articulating what in a short time you anticipate doing. It's $400, but she's down to the penny on mileage, right?
I know, I know.
So it's
But I'd like to-
responsible. So
Yeah, I'd like to, if we're gonna keep it, take it out of Board of
Yeah.
Appeals and put it over into Planning Board, and it would make more sense, and you could track it better, because it didn't seem like it gets really utilized.
CPA, I mean, to be quite honest, in fiscal year 2000, I don't know, let's just say 2013. I get a little confused sometimes when I'm talking about fiscal year. In 2013, ZBA met twice, so it
yeah.
kind of tells you, I mean, but then again, this year, maybe they'll need a lot more. I don't really know. It depends on how many 40Bs come in front of us.
But they're not using meeting expense.
No, that's true, right.
I mean, unless you're having a party every time you meet.
Refreshments, no.
Refreshments.
So just to ask the different way, if we give you that 430 in addition to the 600, you'll have $1,000 of meeting expense, and you've articulated close to 500 to 600.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take it out.
no, so I'm just asking, is there other things that you haven't thought of that you would ultimately go to?
Well, I would just say, this position is an entry-level position. Erica comes, with a lot of experience from engineering, but she is expanding into this job. And, so it's important to have some room to find out what you don't know. And, to limit it down. I mean, if you're saying she can come back to you and ask for more money for, ongoing education and things like that, but.
But that's always an option. I don't think we want to take it away from her, and I know that we, and I also don't think.
Put it somewhere else.
Yeah, and I also, whether we cut it, it may be too soon for Erica to, to be able to make this decision.
You've got a lot of meetings and a lot of training already planned. I
would suggest moving it and keeping it at 450. I don't know how.
Well, I don't know, I would,
Don't think she.
I can't see how you'd spend it, frankly.
Well, it's been spent though. See, 435. I mean, the meeting budget has been spent.
Right, but that could be where the mileage that we're
It
discussing.
could have been with the
is
mileage,
showing.
yeah. Yeah, we don't know.
Could
Well, I
be
also
worse.
think last year, Jennifer, I don't know what she was thinking about, but,
Right.
as she's leaving, but she probably wasn't as active
No, but
in
even
a
if you go
whole
to
bunch
years,
of areas as she might have been the year
Yeah.
before.
we go to years,
So
we look
last
at
year's
years,
budget.
several years earlier than that,
Yeah, we
too.
go back to 11, but, well.
What I would say is that I agree with Bob that I have a hard time understanding that we'll spend it. If there's something that comes up after it's exhausted that's worth going to, then we're always sympathetic to making transfers mid-cycle. So you're new, you haven't been here a while, but we have some funds at the advisory committee's discretion that we typically hand out. Handout's a bad word, but we approve from time to time.
For unexpected.
For unexpected expense over budget.
Yep.
And we've shown a willingness to allocate that money to useful purposes.
Yeah, and even though a training may not be necessarily fit into that definition, I think given this is your first year and you don't know what's out there, or what you're going to need to be attending, that's, I agree. So we would just eliminate this $450 here out of the
Appeals.
ZBA,
Yeah.
and then you can come back
50.
and get,
Okay.
The only qualifier I would have on that would be, would there be anybody other than you who would be attending special meetings or training on the ZBA?
That I don't know. I don't know the experience of my board or if
Julie,
they'd
do you
be
know?
interested.
No idea.
I mean, certainly the conversation from
Well-
last year, it seemed to me, it was all Jenny.
Then, yeah, take it out, and if anybody else needs from the
Yeah,
ZBA
let's find
needs to go
out.
to training, then they'll have them come to advisory, and we'll meet them.
If someone on the Board of Appeals,
We'll meet them.
Julie, if someone on the Board of Appeals went for training and paid money out of their pocket, and then there's a mechanism for them to request reimbursement, right? And that would go through you or through Donna?
Through me.
And so have you had any of that experience that you recall?
Actually, thousands of things come through her desk every day.
Yeah, if you knew how many bills I paid, I really don't know who all these people are. I can't tell you.
Certainly, there hasn't been anything this year, and there's nothing happened in CPA this year. I mean, granted, and so that I think if we're coming from somebody else, maybe you would have seen some activity.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with what we're gonna do.
Okay, so the way do you want to talk at all about ZBA? It's
Well,
sitting
then
with a $200
yeah, just-
budget.
Not really. I mean, it is kind of what it is. So,
Mhm.
I know you had some comments about 4D projects
Mhm.
in your emails.
Oh,
I just
yeah, I
wanted
did have
to
a question.
address that.
Thank you for reminding me what I said.
So you were asking about Sunset Ridge, where they kind of were in the process. I received a letter stating that Sunset Ridge had sold all their affordable units in January. They were done with that. So that's kind of all I know at this point about Sunset Ridge and where they're at. Riverside has been permitted, but hasn't gone to construction yet.
Where is Riverside?
Good question. I know it's Mark
You know?
Hagan, the developer.
I honestly
So
don't.
that's, no, it's not.
It's
It's
the
down
one
by
that-
Still River.
Okay, is it?
By Still River. Where is it?
I've just heard about it, that it's.
What was brought up last year too, we're almost there. And I just don't know what Riverside is. I never heard
I
that.
can get back to you. I can send you an email.
That would be great.
Yeah, because honestly, I don't know what the.
Joanne, can you copy
What's
me
the
of
one
that?
off of Sugar and Golden Run?
That's the Sugar Road one. Oh, no, the Sugar and Golden, the one across from
Yeah,
Hebert.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
another one that,
No,
That's
not the
No,
Hebert
that's not a
one.
40B.
That's a.
You're talking about the
That's the
rumors
40B.
that
Across from
Yeah.
Colonial Candy?
yeah,
No,
On Sugar Road.
that's not the one I'm
Oh,
talking
across
about.
from Colonial Candy.
Colonial Candy.
At
Oh,
Develop,
yeah, but that's the Sugar Road one, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so that,
Oh, Huff.
Martha
Houghton
Hagen's
Farm?
involved with
Are you talking
that.
about?
oh, the,
Houghton Farm
oh,
that's
yes, the
further
Houghton
up?
Farm.
That's a subdivision.
So that's no
Subdivision,
40B.
That's not a 40B
No.
now. I think it has some affordable housing requirements based on our bylaw, but it's not a 40B.
Okay, and Sugar Road,
And then Sugar Road actually was purchased by Mark O'Hagan, who also did Riverside, and he just recently came to ZBA requesting an extension of his comprehensive permit, and he's going to be coming back at some point because they're making design changes to that. So that's moving forward. He really wants to be in construction.
And that's a 40B.
And that's a 40B as well, yeah.
You're supposed to have a percentage of property as
10%.
10%? So every time even a subdivision goes up, we have a
Me
requirement for
too.
some,
Yeah.
and that
I
would
think
go towards that 10%.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is, suppose you have a whole subdivision of just affordable housing, that raises the amount of affordable housing that you need to meet the 10%.
Sort of like your own chasing.
So for every 10 affordable housing units that you build, you have to build an
One more.
11th one in order to be at your 10%.
So what are the affordable, so there's affordable
That's
housing?
10% of the entire housing stock.
No, so there's affordable housing requirements at Century Mill?
There
Yes.
are,
And they're what,
40.
800,000 supposed to a million?
they don't, they want to pay money
That's
into
in
the
lieu
trust,
of, yeah, okay.
because they don't want it in the development. So then you have, you just have the cash in the trust, and so you're not having the affordable units built.
Oh, there's a way around that. That way,
That way.
that way.
Yeah, because God forbid you have an affordable unit next to $1.2 million houses.
They seem to be a little bit more active right now, right? I mean,
They
you're
are.
seeing a lot of, I've done get some emails about houses available, and they're popping up all over the place. They all look the same though, but they're popping up all over.
Okay.
So we'll talk about any articles that you guys are
Okay,
planning have
just-
at another time.
Great.
So
Okay.
meetings in the ZBA is going down to 0?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. She comes.
Call Jenna though, and just check on that.
Okay, sure.
I mean, if there's,
Yeah.
get back to me.
And she was using that one.
Any other questions for Erica? Jonathan?
That was very well done.
Very nice,
Yeah,
thank you.
very
And
good.
welcome. You survived, yay! Got through it.
Nice to meet all of you.
Not nice to see you again.
Of course, none of us introduced ourselves.
Well, I've seen her, I went in and talked to her. She's got an office right around the corner. I'm gonna say hi.
Maybe she'll smell the fumes and want to move back.
Gary.
Oh, the fumes.
Oh, the fumes, that's right.
Don't stop.
So we are welcoming Gary Kulak to talk about IT, MIS.
I see you have version 2. I apologize for the
Yes.
errors in the earlier handouts.
Wouldn't have noticed. I have to, it's not my forte.
What's that, the numbers?
I know, numbers are good.
I don't
Numbers
think
are
it's
good.
my forte
I'm
either.
good at numbers. I gotta get caught up in all these words. I'm looking at these things. I mean, I do know GIS QM, I'm a query manager. But I don't listen.
You remember that from
Yeah,
last
from
year?
last, well, I wasn't on it last, but I watched it. Some of this stuff we get into anyway.
Yeah.
So I do get lost.
Does
in
everyone
all
have
that.
version 2 of the
They were
handouts? Because I have
sent
extras.
version.
How do we know if we got
I
that?
have
says
version
B2,
2 on top,
B2.
right here, Bob.
I don't.
All right, I don't have that.
Thank you.
Come on,
Thank you.
Bob, Julie, you really want one?
Go ahead. I've got them. Give one to David.
I have the,
Thank you.
I live in China.
there-
Oh, it does, okay.
yeah, there are
What's the-
changes.
Do you have another?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I have a few extra for you.
Yeah, look at the town administrator, Gary.
Town administrator requires one as well. I should start charging for this. Okay.
Okay, so just do an overview for it first. I like the overviews, and then we can get into the nitty gritty, because there's so much nitty gritty.
Yeah, well, first of all, in terms of fiscal year 14, there have been some surprises in terms of my services having to do with the GIS project. Also, we did get an HP plotter donated to us, and it was working, but we had some serious,
Can you tell me what a plotter is?
it's that big thing. if you-
Oh, that's when you were asking about the
Yeah, it
plotter.
prints out these very large GIS maps.
Okay.
Prints out
Okay.
things like that.
Okay.
Okay? And a bunch of miscellaneous tasks that were kind of surprises. Last year, we spoke a little bit about backups and my intent to use some tape drives that I had, and both of those had failed, so that caused a little bit of a turnover for me. We had a upgrade of the Esri GIS software that turned out to be pretty difficult. CAM install turned out to be pretty difficult, and a bunch of other things that, just tasks that normally I accommodate under general support, but in this case, they ended up to be a little bit more complex than anticipated. At the bottom of the first page, I just sort of give you a picture of the breakdown of my services for FY13 versus FY14. You can see the percentages there. Nothing really interesting other than the fact that the project work is roughly around 40% or 45%. And from last year to this year, there was a shift from the GOTMS project to the GIS project. So GOTMS project required, I don't know, this year, 10%. And GIS was up close to 33%.
At some point, that's going to be done, right, Gary?
Yes. Could be during your lifetime. No, it's one of those projects where, it's one of those projects where you get the basic infrastructure in place, and then if the multiple departments in town and the residents really get to use it and they want more data, more content, then it could continue to go on. But the idea here is to get a basic mapping capability out that people can use and other departments and the residents can use as well.
And I saw that goal that's going to be available at the beginning of March, you said?
Well, the pilot is out there now, and, with the username and password, you can get onto it and take a look at it. But there's a few things I want to finish up content-wise before I officially let it go to all the other departments and the residents. And I'm pretty sure we'll be able to do that by the end of February, March 1st.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So we talked about repairs, software support. Again, I'm sort of talking about the current year, just so I can sort of set the base of the context. Software support, no issues there. Pretty standard stuff year to year. Web services, pretty standard stuff again. Last year. Equipment, I didn't spend as much. I had some. I ended up with lower costs for some warranties and some PCs, so we got a little bit of a reduction there. But again, this year, based on my run rate, it looks as if I'll be requesting a transfer to try to help support that. So that's FY14 to date.
All right, Don, is there any, I don't know how to ask this delicately, but, is this project, is all of this work considered essential?
Which work?
For fiscal 14, that might result in requirements for an additional transfer?
I'm not aware of anything that we could defer to FY15 to avoid a transfer.
Okay.
So are we just looking, Gary, at the bottom line here, the difference between 51 and 52,965?
Yeah, basically. What I did in terms of the projected increase in projected services was I looked at my run rate right now, just kind of extrapolated it to the end of the year, did some educated adjustments here and there based on my experience, and came up with that number.
So we're just talking about $2,800?
Yeah, something like that.
That's not it.
Yeah. And I did.
And we'll try to manage that as tightly as possible.
Yeah.
If we can rein it in, we can rein it in, but I'm not sure we've got $2,800 worth that we can avoid in there.
Yeah, because it's really all sitting up in some purchases and services, and you've gone through and, and estimated it through the year here.
Yep.
Your billable rate stays the same in 15, Gary?
Yes, 45 and 65, which my basic rate is 45 an hour for standard support, and then for design work or architecture work or things like that, it's higher at 65. Virtually 98% of my billables are, at $45 an hour. Same rate structure for FY14 and FY15. And I think it's discussed in my contract.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yep.
Contract.
So just
My contract, I think, was June, end of fiscal 15. That's June 2015.
Yeah. And that's usually a 3-year contract?
Yeah, it was. This year was a little bit odd because of some missed dates, but effectively it's
It was meant to be a 3-year contract.
It's meant to be a 3-year contract.
We're your contract in spirit.
Yeah. Okay, so going forward in terms of FY15, I had an original request, and again, I'm kind of looking at my run rate and looking at the projects that I have to do, and I'd like to update my request a little bit in FY15 for the services. And the reason for that is, again, the project work with the GIS stuff. We did have a little bit of a hiccup with the GIS consultant. Because of some personnel changes, there was a sort of a gap where the GIS consultant wasn't available all the time, and we had to sort of renegotiate or get that thing back on track. So that took a bit of an effort. After that happened, I found that I I need to spend more time sort of project managing the GIS consultant. So there's more work for me based on that. And that will continue. In terms of other projects for next year, well, before I start talking about projects, I'd like to talk about kind of a long-term plan. And this kind of has to do with backup and disaster recovery that we spoke a little bit about last year. If you recall, last year we talked about the need to look at more sophisticated, more relevant backup structures and even disaster recovery, which means that if we have a failure somewhere, is there a way of getting operations back, not just getting data available that we would have to reinstall and set up new computers, etc. So there's this whole general area of disaster recovery. If some crisis happens, how do we get computing operations up and back up and operating as quickly as possible? That's a bit more complex than just taking backups and restoring from backups. So understanding the options there, I think I'd like to spend some time researching cloud-based services. Microsoft has something called Office 365, just as an example, where they take all their Office applications and they basically serve those Office applications from their servers, i.e. from the cloud. And I think that's all relevant to sort of a disaster recovery strategy. So bottom line is I'd like to spend some time next year really formalizing this, doing the research on the options and coming up with something.
Okay.
In the meantime, sorry, Bob.
No, sorry to interrupt, but, I'm not sure everything in Town Hall needs to be up and running within 24 hours or 48.
Right.
So, I hope you're going to work with Dawn and maybe some other department
I think one of the first steps would be,
differentiate.
Requirements gathering, what are the critical operations that we need?
Okay.
Clearly not everything, but, I think what I'd probably do is look at that as sort of the base requirements first, and then look at technology solutions that are available, evaluate those.
Now, does this include just Town Hall, or does it include the Police and Fire Department, does it include the library,
Well,
DPW?
it would include DPW, it would definitely include Town Hall. I do not get involved with the PSB, with the Public Safety Building.
Okay,
Okay, so that wouldn't cover that.
Okay.
They have their own sort of
They've got
approach to
to,
this.
okay.
And in terms of the library, it would include the library, but right now, there's not a lot of the operations of the library are public PCs, circulation stuff,
Right,
which is all cloud-based anyway.
Right,
So,
okay.
it's almost already there, so there's not a lot of issues with
It's not at the top of disaster
Right,
recovery.
exactly.
Got that.
But even if it were, I think they're already in pretty good shape because
Okay.
they're doing their services from external
Oh, I see your
CWMR
point.
servers.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So- No, I guess last year when this sort of came up, it was a little too early to it. I mean, we
Well,
were hoping that
I
those
had hoped that I would be a little bit further along in this sort of researching and coming up with this strategy. I just, didn't have the time to do that, and I was dealing with tape drives falling apart and things like that.
both of them.
In the short term, what I've come up with, because I don't have tape drives now, in the short term, what I've come up with is continue to do our backups onto file servers, which is what we've always been doing. But instead of using the tape drive kind of as a backup, I'm now using an online backup service. And I'll continue to do that kind of dual protection while we're doing this, long-term IT planning and disaster recovery stuff.
Okay.
So my budget accounts for online backup services next year because I'm anticipating I'll have to continue through next year for that. So that's kind of a project I'd like to work on, definitely for next year to,
Yeah.
do the research and the architecting for
I think
that.
we've got to invest some money in that.
Is that where you're seeing primarily this change from purchase of services from the original request, $30,755 to $33,700?
Well, it's kind of all of these things
All of
in
these
that
things, okay.
thing, and it's just a little bit more than I anticipated. Part of the GIS project is trying to get data, and there are two ways of getting data to generate maps that are useful to town departments. One is go out and do raw data collection, and another is take as-built CAD drawings and things like that and try to integrate or import those into our GIS system. So we have efforts to actually look at how to do both of those as effectively as we can. There's a standard that was developed by Mass GIS, which is the state's GIS thing. And they've started to address what kind of CAD drawings should be specified to, by submitters so that we can pull that stuff into GIS. So another project that we should be working on as part of the GIS thing is to really understand what we should be requiring from developers in terms of plan submittals, et cetera, in a digital format in such a way that they can be easily incorporated into our GIS and business systems. So that's another task that I'd like to work on. So that's kind of a sort of a snapshot of purchase of services for FY15. Further questions on that?
I don't know if this is applicable now or later, but what do we have in place in the event of, forgive the hypothetical, sort of a catastrophic event to this building?
Well, that's part of the disaster recovery, I guess, fear. I think what we have in place is just what I talked about earlier, which is the very basic, simple backup and off-site backup. In the past, I had tapes somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, I have online backup somewhere else on another server.
Have we ever investigated the possibility of going, as PCs become not obsolete, but as PCs become replaced and upgraded, to switch to laptops and require that folks take laptops home with them and then have some sort of a VPN type setup where in the event of a disaster people could technically connect? And
that's actually a piece of the puzzle, and frankly it's a small piece of the puzzle. The first thing that you have to worry about is you're talking basically about telecommuting or remote access into kind of a server infrastructure. Well, our server infrastructure is in my office.
It's right there.
So, if this place burns down, that's the fundamental thing that needs to be protected. So that's the primary priority. Once that's addressed, whether it's
here,
whether it's on a cloud somewhere or whatever my study comes up with, once that's addressed, then frankly the remote connection, Randy, becomes a very simple technical problem. That's kind of the
idea.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea, and it's kind of the small piece. The first thing we have to worry about is the servers, all the data that we have there, et cetera. That's the most important.
Then we can pretty much go to anything.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
That was a good question, thank you. Repairs for next year. HP plotter, I'm assuming it broke twice. I'm assuming it's going to break probably one more time next year, so I have some money in for that to raise the repairs. And I also, there's a laptop in the library, which is beyond warranty, but it's a lightly used laptop. It's in very good condition. And it's kind of time for technology refresh on that, but I can't really justify buying a new laptop for it, so I want to put a little extra money in here for potential repairs if that thing breaks.
On the plotter, you're implying that we're going to spend at least $850 a year.
Not on the plotter. That's
No.
$850.
400 for the plotter.
400 for the plotter. And
Okay.
I think I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, okay. At what point do you say, I can't fix this anymore?
After I had the first two service calls, I was asking myself that question right away, and
it's Newland cut.
That's where I was going.
I don't really have that data. The people who did the service for me were talking about, they have great used plotters.
But those are in the low mid-teens.
Well, these a good plotter. Actually, the good plotters they were talking about, I think the guy told me, if I remember correctly, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 for a good new plotter.
A good new one.
Yeah. So that's something that I want to look at because in a matter of 2 weeks, I spent $800 on that plotter.
Well, $800 every 2 weeks not good, but $450 a year is just fine.
Yeah, I understand. But I don't know. And the other thing they told me when the service guy came, he said, geez, I can fix this. I happen to have some of the parts, but they stopped making these parts because the plotter was good, but it was an old plotter, so parts aren't available. So that scared me, and I said, we got to do something else.
Yeah.
So in the short term, I just want to allocate this and then probably look at what it means for a new one. So next budget cycle will probably come in with a capital request. So
Good. Excellent. You should, not to interrupt, but you should get those type of things on capital planning's radar. They do a
Five-year
five-year
plan.
Oh, yeah,
Plan.
for depreciation, and things like that.
and anything.
No,
We
just-
don't- we don't have depreciation, but they want to be able to look at the whole mix
Yeah.
and prioritize.
Okay.
If you think that's something within a year or two, they would want, it's 15 grand would definitely be in their purview. They'd want to schedule it, know about it, and any other major technology items for that matter. That would be probably above I'd say a $10,000.
Yeah, they have to put that on their radar. for sure.
That's a good idea. We need to make it.
Okay, good, thank you. Next year, software support. I had made a mistake on my original submission. I talked about we needed like 30 licenses to upgrade to Windows 7. It turns out that when I purchased the original PCs for the library, that I was able to get a special deal where we got a free upgrade to Windows 7. So I could save 23 licenses there.
Okay.
So there's no need there. Web services for next year, it's a little bit lower than previous years because we had a one-time setup fee for the GIS project, and I sort of scavenged and salvaged some email accounts that were being used, so that all added up to a little bit of a savings. So web services have gone down. What's included in web services is a virtual town hall, which is our website, BCIS annual fees, which is the boards and committees information system that the town clerk had developed, domain name registration, MCC online credit processing, and
Comcast is it?
Comcast for the email stuff.
And that's why that's reduced from last year because
It's reduced because we salvaged some emails, but that was a small piece of it. The big thing was no $1,000 for a one-time
$1,000, yeah.
fee, and that's pretty much it after that. Purchase of equipment for next year. 6 PCs are scheduled for technology upgrade. I've listed them here for the BPL, planner, treasurer, accountant, clerk. Yeah. And Counter Camo, which is the public PC upstairs that people use for looking up assessor data.
So can I stop you there?
Yes.
$7,500 for 6 PCs.
Yep.
Set almost $1,000 a PC.
That's my standard, yeah.
What you can go buy a new PC at Best Buy for $1,000.
Yeah, but not with the kind of office applications in
Okay.
Windows
No, I
7.
was just asking.
So this is with all the software.
This is the package, yeah.
What point in time do you look at the age of a PC and spending $1,000 to upgrade it versus deciding when you need to get a new one?
I stretch it as much as I can till, frankly, I use the warranty extension, or the warranty extension schedule that Dell has, which is 5 years for laptops and 7 years for desktops and servers.
But you ever worry that we're putting sort of fancy hubcaps on a Pinto, at that point? If it's 5 years, the PC's 5 years old and you're gonna put $1,000 worth of new technology on it? No?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
For another
I'm not
7
putting
years, though.
I'm not putting $1,000 of new stuff on it.
Well,
I'm
just
replacing the
the
PC. I'm replacing the PC.
Which includes the software.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Includes
so
the
these
software.
are replacements?
Yes, they
Yeah.
are. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah.
When I
It's an upgrade,
say a
right.
technology replacement, I mean, I take that old piece of iron and software
Okay.
and recycle it somewhere, and then I put a whole brand new piece of hardware and new software. in
Good,
its
okay.
place.
Yeah, I just saw
Brand-
upgrades. so
Hardware and
obviously,
software
so you-
technology refresh, I probably should have specified that. There's a printer in there for the assessor, the online backup service that we talked about, and some miscellaneous hardware and supplies. I increased that to $750 because I'm looking at supplies for the plotter, which is fairly expensive, and I'm estimating that $500 to $600.
So Dale, I just wanted to just bring this together because it sounds like it's higher. The original request and the updated request, it looks like it's $900 difference.
For which one are we talking about?
15. So it's the original request totaled $56,293.
Oh, yes.
And now we're looking at
A little bit more,
57.
a little bit more, but I had made that
$900.
mistake about the licenses, so I saved $3,000 there. and that's-
Wow.
So back to my earlier question. if you're now replacing 6 PCs
Yes,
for $7,500,
yes.
and they're gonna have a 7-year life, 5-year life,
Other than laptops, yes.
why wouldn't you, in the future structure of potentially a VPN with a server that's not here, why wouldn't we think ahead and buy Go laptops right now for those replacements?
Well, first of all, I don't like laptops.
Okay.
I don't like laptops because of the 5-year, 7-year thing, for one thing.
Mhm.
Number two, laptops do not have, for the price, laptops do not have anywhere near the power of desktops. And as we start to use more of this GOTMS, the GIS stuff, we're going to need more and more capability there. So I think performance is important. So I like the performance per dollar character of desktops versus laptops. The more important, so that's sort of an initial cut at that. The more important thing, I think, is I really hesitate to jump in and start making assumptions about what this IT long-term plan is going to result in. I think it's going to be cloud-based applications, but I don't know for sure yet. I really need to do the due diligence and understand what's the best thing that would fit.
But if it were cloud-based applications,
Yes.
the person wouldn't need to bring, they could use their home computer.
They could, exactly. Or more importantly, they might be able to use a tablet. I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't want to go out and, because the laptops are actually fairly expensive. I mean, you buy a good laptop, it's up to $1,500 with the software and everything else.
Mhm.
And you have a relatively low performance. I think there's a higher tendency for problems with it, just because it gets carried around. It's
Physical damage.
Yeah, physical damage, et cetera. So I really kind of like the desktops. I think 2 years from now, when we have a good plan in place for what we're going to do disaster recovery-wise and, cloud-based applications-wise, then we can make decisions about, do we change from desktops and laptops to tablets or the other kind of notebooks? I don't know. But now it's a little too early.
Does anybody have tablets now, other than the planner?
There's
Planner has
two.
one, right?
Planner has one, and Carol, the conservation, has one.
Yeah, she took,
And if someone wanted one, as instead of, if Julie said, I want a tablet instead of a PC, what would you tell her? No,
Instead of a PC? I
Well, I don't
would be
know,
able to
she-
do my work.
no, what if you
Julie's bad example.
Well, what if you said you wanted a laptop, like, maybe that?
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about, Randy, is and I sort of backed off on this, I've been thinking about the better thing to do for folks is to have a good desktop and then have a remote mobile device, whether it's a tablet or something else. I mean, that was sort of my model that I was thinking about. They would have both. They'd have a real good, high-performance, reliable desktop system and then a low-cost tablet.
Netbook, certainly.
Yeah, but I put that on the side because, again,
Yeah.
I don't know
Tell you,
I don't know what the
yeah.
architecture's gonna be,
I understand.
you know? So
I'm
that's
just
what-
asking the question
No, that's-
because we're locking ourselves into $7,500 purchase.
Yeah.
We don't know what the
But-
landscape's
but
gonna be.
not
in 5
for,
years.
not for the whole town. I mean,
No,
not for all.
Yeah, there's 6 people and,
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the final page, any other questions?
yes, Gary.
Yeah, historically, the equipment line item has come in under budget, and I notice in fiscal 14, that's something you're revising down. Are you sure there isn't some safety or wiggle room in the 10,150?
I can't be 100% sure on that, Dave, but I looked at these numbers twice.
He's coming in for a transfer request this year, too.
Well, it's not on equipment. Equipment's helping reduce the size of the transfer.
Did you see on the second page, he's got it spelled out at the bottom? I mean, I don't know, but you said, 6,
Yeah, but those are all estimates.
everything's,
The
yeah.
whole budget's an estimate.
Well,
Yeah, but my,
But my point is, for all of the last 3 years, I think, the estimate for equipment has been higher than what really happened. And I'm wondering if maybe there's some
Savings.
room in there that should be squeezed out. And I
You know-
don't think that's an unreasonable thing to wonder when we...
no, I think it's a reasonable question. I mean, I tend to A lot of these things, I think, are pretty accurate estimates based on the fact that I've been doing this for 5 years and I've been using Dell, and, you know, I just sort of know what those things are. Warranty extensions, I'm pretty confident in what those prices are. For the PCs, I have a little bit of wiggle room, but it really depends upon, you know, what kind of desktop I want to configure. For example, the planner I had last year, I'd been thinking about a $1,300, $1,200 PC. Well, the planner now is getting more and more involved with GIS. So I felt that it was important to upgrade her to a, you know, more higher performance PC. And so I think about that and I add a little bit more money into it. So I do need a little bit of, I can't be deterministic ahead of time 100%. So I do need to have a little bit of flexibility.
I don't think these folks mind the coming in for transfer.
Right.
And
David?
So it seems like, I don't know what we're talking about. What do you think there's any, it seems like these are reasonable requests. I don't know if you, maybe last year didn't have 6 PCs. Are you purchasing all of those PCs in 20?
It turns out that one of those PCs was one that I didn't have to purchase because I had another available spare associated with that.
And that can come up. And the warranty extensions, that you've spelled out who these folks are and
I know what those prices are, yeah.
The printer?
The printer is for the assessors, and she's asking for certain specifications or requirements.
And your backup service, you know, because you
I know
have this
exactly,
year,
that's 100%,
miscellaneous
yeah.
hardware, increase due to plotter. That's probably the only, like, soft number, but given that what you're having problems with the plotter,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll leave it up to the committee. I would, I mean, I hear what you're saying, David, but I just think it's so difficult.
If
He's got spelled out exactly what he wants, you know, what he's planning on purchase. It's not a number that says, you know, that, and I can understand some of your concerns in the past, you know, where it says, well, maybe, you know, I want a little wiggle room. Here, it seems like you've got, you know, you've got it spelled out. Could somebody leave and then he doesn't buy it? Yeah, I mean, these things can happen, but I would feel hard pressed to change this line.
Can I say something about the little wiggle room? Is that the advisory reserve is supposed to be used for unexpected expenses. If somebody comes in and says, I expect this to be a $2,000 purchase,
Right.
and you say, well, how much are you certain of? And he says, I'm going to be certain of at least $1,800. And you say, all right, I'm cutting your budget to $1,800. The additional $200 is not an unexpected expense, and it's not appropriate for the advisory committee to later fund that.
But when you add all that up,
Wait, David.
That's fine, but if you go back to the Department of Revenue's regulations on what advisory committees, advisory funds are supposed to be used for, it's for unexpected expenses or expenses that must be incurred because there's a danger to the town and you can't wait till town meeting to fund it.
It's a best estimate. If we continue to tell departments, yeah, we're gonna cut you, you know, $400 or $500, and we're gonna score keep it all like other people have been doing, and we tell them, but don't worry, you can come back. We're gonna run out of money we're gonna be out of money by October.
Not only that,
Well,
we're
that's
being
not-
dishonest to the taxpayers when we present our budget, because we're presenting our budget that we think is deliberately low because we expect to pull it out of our pocket and pay it out during the course of the year, and that's exactly the kind of behavior that the Department of Revenue regulations are meant to prevent.
And I think the other thing is that this is a departmental budget, and we leave it up to our department heads, who have been so conservative. Granted, there's always differences, but if you're within 5% of your budget on a yearly basis, which is really probably where we are when we look at what our returns of unexpended differences have been 5% or less. I think that's an excellent result. And we just run too big of
We just cut $450 of travel because a very articulate speaker outlined exactly what they planned to do with travel or with meeting money, and there was $450 left. It wasn't justified. Gary is justifying every single dollar that he's got here. Technology is one of those items that a PC could cost you $1,500 and it could cost you $1,750. I mean, you just don't always
And you're
know.
trying to meet the needs of the individuals who are going to
Right.
be using it, so it does vary from place to place.
The reserve fund would be used for something like if somebody's PC blew up.
But Gary didn't
Understand.
itemize that he didn't think that the Harold's computer was gonna blow
Yeah, it
up.
wasn't on the list,
scheduled
yeah.
for replacement, it blows up, he needs to buy it, it's not in his budget, he comes.
I mean, I commend this budget is, I mean, this analysis of budget is very detailed, and
Yes.
and I knew that by watching it last year, I said, where is this? I want to see this again.
It was detailed last year, and Gary's gonna,
Yeah.
no disrespect to Gary, but he's gonna come to us with maybe a $3,000 transfer, because of something came up that he didn't expect.
Right,
Right.
right.
No disrespect either, but you have come the past, I think, 3 years for a transfer.
No, just one.
I thought it was, and then this
There
would be
was,
two.
there was a Comcast, small Comcast
Right,
building.
What I'm saying is, your budget has had a history, even though there may be some fluffing between lines sometimes because of the estimated nature, your budget in total has been short for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's no disrespect to you.
Yeah.
It means that he plans as best he can, and, yeah, so I don't buy into some of that.
Does anybody have any other comments about the budget?
Are we gonna go to the last page? I have a question on that.
The last page is, I just put for your information, sort of, I've got 2 main projects that I've been working on for the past several years, GOTMS and the GIS project, and this is just a quick summary of, where things are today. That's all it is.
So I have a budget question related to those 2 project things. It says Erica, as the new planner, gets training, and since we just had this conversation, where's that training coming from? Who's paying? Oh, okay.
Well, actually, it's a combination of 2, but I was able to get her training for free from GIS.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
But he does,
I do a
A lot
lot
of
of
in-house training.
training.
That's good to know.
In fact, for the clerk's office, I spent a lot of time training the clerks before they went to training
The dog
because...
license.
Gary's done a really good job leveraging the GOTMS folks to get as much out of them as we can.
And we have the Herald piece of it through June 2014, and won't need that piece going into 2015?
We won't. Our plan is, and this is kind of a projection, but I think it's a good one. Our plan is to ramp up our capability of our folks in...
That's what you had talked about doing.
In town hall,
Yeah.
myself, Carol, Erica, et cetera, to get them ramped up a little bit more, so we wouldn't necessarily need that GIS consultant.
So people are training people.
Yes.
Kind of a thing.
Gary and I had a fairly detailed conversation about that, and the direction I've given Gary is that, based on what we had committed to advisory when we talked about GIS, I want FY15 to be the year of the staff seeing how much they can ramp up and do on their own, and do our evaluation of what we're getting out of it, maybe what we could be getting out of it if we, if we had a little bit more training or whatever, and then we can come back in FY16 if we think we have a need. But I want FY15 to be
Putting it all under
to
your
be
belt and digesting it.
pulling it all together
Yeah.
and not throwing additional money at it right now, but really looking at what the staff can do.
Well, I think it's going to be very exciting when you can get the residents in town to have access to that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it turned out that there's also a nice tie-in between GIS project and GOTMS, so that if you're looking at the GIS map and you click on a parcel, you can just click on another button and you get all the permitting information from GOTMS web. So it's going to be...
I gotta say, I was very impressed when I turned on my
Did you-
PC in the afternoon of January 1st. And coming
got
into
the
my
burning
inbox
permit.
was my burning permit application.
I got burning permit number 2.
I don't burn.
I got I was up late for New Year's Eve, and I got the email at 12 o'clock, and I just applied at 12:05.
I was very impressed to get
So this is what you do on New Year's
that.
Eve, Randy? You get your burning permit on New Year's Eve?
I didn't know. I mean, it's just, I was
Getting
drunk
out
and I
and
was...
started some sparklers.
Okay, so... I'll
All right.
Good stuff.
Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
Thanks very much
Thanks
for
for your
coming
help,
in.
folks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary.
Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you,
Night.
Dave.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Don.
Okay. So just want to run through a bunch of other business items. Did we read the minutes? We could sign off on the minutes from January 14th. Thank you, Julie, you gave us the minutes on all the other meetings, but this is the meeting that Julie wasn't at. This has been distributed to you for a while. Any comments?
What's it say?
You spend the rest of the meeting reading it.
Hold on, let's see if anybody comes.
So we don't like
What,
to,
January 7th?
whatever day it was. 14th. No, there's all of, people have all.
I just have to check and make sure you spelled my name right, that's all.
I can't even say it, Sikansky, I'm sorry.
I don't have the, but I think it looks
No, it's
great.
been sent to you.
I will say, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
These minutes here that I did read before the meeting started, these are the way that I want, these are minutes in my opinion. These are the way, no, I don't, but these are the way minutes, these are not good, they don't go off, not that Julie did, Linda did a bad job on them, but they tried to
Not referring to the
recap.
one I did.
They recap all the I mean, they were harder to read.
Yes,
than-
yeah,
than
this is
these
very clear.
Are, I will have
And,
no problem reviewing these kind of minutes.
Okay, good. That way you're not losing your job on that. So I'll just send this around. So can we have a motion to accept these minutes? Can somebody make a motion?
So moved.
These are the meeting of
Would anybody
January
like to
14th.
second the motion?
Yeah, whatever.
Second.
There we go.
Okay, any discussion on those minutes? Good, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, these are done. We can get them too. So why don't we, there's a few things we want to discuss. Yeah, I'm trying to decide the order. Why don't we do a couple of sort of mundane things? Did anybody have a chance to look at the annual report? That was sent out to you?
No.
Okay, can you do that? I don't know when she
Change it
needs it by.
significantly from what it's been before?
I put in a little bit more recent information, basically. That's about it. It comes from, nothing exciting except some numbers that just.
I don't think we've ever, as formally as a committee, reviewed the annual report, so kudos to you, but I have not read it yet.
Okay, so as long as,
You don't need our,
I
that's
know,
that's the change. Okay.
but I feel this is a committee, and this comes under the committee's name, so why don't you all take a look at it?
Sure.
Let Linda know if there's any problems. Basically, very similar format as it's been before, but the one thing I did do, because it's for the annual town report, I just tried to make it annual, and just put in some numbers and some specific things from this year. Okay, so can we just say that before next week, I don't know, I'm supposed to have this done by January 31st, so it's not.
Looks great.
Okay.
Best feeling.
Okay, so if you have any problems, how about this? If you have any problems, please let me know before Friday. Okay? And otherwise, I'll get it off to Linda. I want to have a discussion about having the Historical Commission come back to meet with us. We have, to sort of refresh when they came in, there was quite a bit of discussion about what the purchase of services line item referred to, that it had to do with payment for consulting services to survey different areas in town. First it was the Pan Cemetery, then the Pan area. And there's just concern whether, that we wanted to ask more questions about what was being, what the charge of the Historical Commission was and what they're doing with the monies that we have given them, and I'd like to have them back. Is that?
I would.
Okay.
I regret that I didn't ask the question when they were first in here, but a couple days later, I started thinking about this surveying and adding historical districts, and I had some reservations, but primarily, I need to make sure that what I thought I understood is really what they meant to tell me.
And I did with Bob, I've heard different things, and I think it's unclear, and I think it's unclear enough that we should have them back.
Okay.
So I'll get in touch with Linda, and we'll get them to a meeting.
And maybe you want to give them a list of things that some.
I will, I'd send that to everybody, yeah.
The one thing I'm thinking of is, so my concern, just to put it out there, I'm not afraid to do it, is, are they adding additional areas of surveying to the town that will identify historic buildings that then that building, unbeknownst to the residents or without resident input, that building becomes a historic building, and then there are some quote-unquote limitations on what that person can or cannot do with their property.
Just because it now
Just because
appears
it
in
now-
a historic,
that's right,
in a
because
historic
the-
district.
And if that is true, then I believe that we need more wide-ranging input, because what that may do is sort of creep a historic district upon a town that doesn't want it. Or at least was clear at town meeting a
Last
couple years ago that they don't want it, especially in the most historic district that we have, which is
Last year.
downtown, right?
That was 2 years ago. I think it
Or
was
2 years.
2012, yeah.
So I don't know if you want to just get them, at least, I don't know what Bob's concerns are, there might be
You know,
some.
I understand, first off, I understand that the historic district for the center of town 2 years ago is different than what the historical commission's been talking about. I understand Randy's concern, I share them. I guess my concern is even more so in that I understand putting the Pan Cemetery, for example, in the Registry of Historic Places, but as I understood it, they were going to expand that to that area of
Yep.
town, put that in historic places. I'd like to know what that does for the town, and is it worth even spending the money to increase the number of historic places in the National Historic Register as far as Bolton's concerned?
Register those
You
places.
know,
right.
because I can't differentiate between that and the Star Registry, in terms of what it brings to the town.
And don't they have some money from last year that,
Well, see, that's the
No,
other implication
What's the
is,
money from last
the
year?
way that I remember the conversation going was the money for 15 was a continuation,
Yes.
quote unquote, of work started last year.
Right.
And so my other
That's-
concern is, were we locked in, did we sign a
I think we have
contract
to
that
find out
said,
if it's
do
contract.
we have to finish the work? I mean, then you have to think about it differently, or is this just, hey, you did really good work here, why don't you focus on this area now? And then I have the same sort of concerns that Bob does. Is this just, are we gonna eventually do the whole town? And what does the town get from that? Does the town want that? Is it just the historical commission that wants that?
Yeah.
Because clearly that's their interest. What the spend does for the town is another.
Let me also make clear that I have no questions about their cemetery work, the work they're doing there. That's, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy with everything they told me, and that's not.
So you're talking about the tombstone repair?
The tombstone.
Oh, yeah.
But how,
that's not-
but also how, the plan for 2016, they went on to say this was to survey and register north, let me get that wrong, south and west cemeteries.
Okay, well, we should discuss that, and
Okay.
what does that bring to the town?
Yeah,
If
so I
that
mean,
happens.
so it's really, it's in a broader question, it's
It's the surveying,
it's
it's-
surveying and historical
Right, but
districting of any area.
The restoration stuff they're doing in the cemeteries, I don't have any issues.
And I don't have any issues with the 6 signs that they were gonna
Well, that's already been
place
approved,
on
yeah, and
already
Board of Selectmen,
identified
yeah.
secure, historical places.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with that either.
Okay. Okay, so let's get them in. I'll write something, I'll send it out to Martha, and we'll get them, let you know what it's gonna be. Randy is going
Oh,
to discuss
Yeah.
the ambulance reserve
I
analysis.
think I have 5 copies, so
We'll share.
Connie and I will look on them here. So,
Okay.
what I did was, as promised, I did this math quickly last week, and so where I start is a fund balance at the end of December. Julie's been kind enough to give me the next 13 months of actuals from
Where,
January.
2012?
Yep, the actual
Okay.
2012, I'm
Okay.
sorry. And then the 13 months starting January 13 to January 14, all of those numbers are the actual ambulance receipts that we've received.
wow,
And as you can see, they vary quite a bit. And so what I've tried to do is the 8678 that I project from February, March, and April is 90% of the 13-month average. So I've taken the 13-month average, I've tried to be conservative by shaving 10% off of it, because as you can see, some of these months have wild swings, right?
15,000 down to
Yeah, to 6,700, right?
15,000, yeah.
It's I talked to Dawn a little bit today, it's a function of billing, call volume, there used to be some lag with the billing that's somewhat been eliminated by the fact that Blue Cross, I believe now, sort of direct deposits to us, et cetera. So there's some rhyme and reason to the variability, but a lot of it is call drop volume driven. So remember, the goal here is to have in the fund at the end of April, because we meet for town meeting on May 6th, and if we're gonna ask the town on May 6th to number one, take money out of the ambulance budget to infuse the budget, the ambulance receipts fund to infuse the budget with, which we've done in the past, and two, buy a $250,000 new ambulance. We theoretically need all that money at the end of April in the fund. And so what this does is, if you notice at the bottom, the balance, if we take $250 out of for the ambulance and we put $23,238 into the operating budget, as opposed to the $77,500 that we have in there now, we will have a zero balance in the ambulance fund at the end of town meeting. And then it will get replenished 2 more months, May and June,
And then,
to have a $17,000 balance at the end of the fiscal year. So I've built in some conservatism because we really don't know how February, March, and April are gonna come out. But what this suggests is that the $77,500 that we have right now in the revenue sheet should be reduced to $23,238, which is a reduction of $54,262.
And the 8678 was calculated how?
It's 90% of the 13-month average. So I took the 13-month average and I shaved the 10% conservative haircut off of it, just to not be precise and exact. But again, we could have a 20% haircut. We could not infuse any. We could take the $77,500 down to zero if we decide to not cut it that close.
you only worry if it's these $6,000 months, you
That's
know?
right.
Yeah.
If need be, we will certainly have the March numbers before we go to town meeting, and we may have to make an amendment on the floor.
Yeah,
If
or
April doesn't come in the way you expect.
Or we just bite the bullet and we take the $77,500 down to zero. I can guarantee you that we'll have enough at April, even if we replenish at zero for the next 3 months, right?
Do we go, has it been pretty much that we get down to zero and then we start building up?
No.
I mean, during the 5 years or 6 years of the life of the ambulance?
So what I did last year was I tried to project not only for this ambulance purchase, but the 5-year ambulance purchase. And what I found, even just a year ago, I was almost $3,000 off a month in the estimate last year, based on the historical 12 months before. So ambulance receipts have gone down. And so it's so far off that I decided that we really should look at this every year. And we should, every year in our budget process, decide based on the last 12 months, how much, we should always look out a year with that new run rate and figure out what we can afford to infuse into the budget each fiscal year as we get 5 years closer to a new ambulance. And then also, the new ambulance, is it gonna be 400,000 in 5 years, or is it gonna be 300? I mean, you don't know.
And that 250 might, did we decide that we had to do the 250? We can't, because we can't anticipate the trade-in, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's gotta be the
Not gonna be
250.
the same fiscal year anyway.
So given, you're seeing that the ambulance receipts are dropping, can you determine if it's collection issues or if
No,
it's
so-
lack of calls?
I think to Margie's budget, remember, she was under her budget by more than 50%. She hadn't spent 50% at the middle, because she had admitted that call volume was down.
Yeah.
And I think some of these are on a lag. I don't think we get a bill in August for a call that we made in August. I think
No, or
some
even-
of it's
maybe
the
not
month
even
before,
July.
I don't necessarily know the timing. Donna said that with the automations with Medicare and some of the insurance companies, that she's getting money on a more real-time, like direct deposit basis. Julie can probably speak to some of that. But I tried to inquire as to the massive variability, and I just got, it is really volume related. And so Julie hasn't seen this, I prepared before I left work, but I'd be curious to see what her take on the numbers are when she gets a chance to digest it, but I think I'm pretty right here.
You mean with the 8678 number, or the?
Yeah, no, just the whole concept of having to have the money as of April
Yeah, well, she said that, yeah.
and using, I mean, listen, 90% of the 13-month average is just an arbitrary 10% haircut. I don't know, you know, that puts 86, 78 as the bogey for the next 3 months. If you look, you know, we've had a couple $6,800 months, but a bunch of 13s and a bunch of 9s and a bunch of 8s, so it doesn't seem too far out of reach. And to Bob's point, we can put in a bogey now, you know, reduce the 77.5 to 20,000, and then revisit this as ambulance receipts come in over the next 3 months or 2 months as we work the process here. So
I'm comfortable with going with your numbers here as far as the next iteration of the budget goes on the spreadsheets.
Well, I always like to do a round number because then it looks like you really know, you know, I mean, the problem with doing something like 23,238, because these are estimates and stuff, I would go with 20,000 or 25,000. I mean, I just don't think you want to be that exact on the budget
I
sheet.
understand that.
But I think we should make the change.
23,000 then.
23,000,
just,
and,
Jude, do you see anything majorly flawed with this work as you look at it?
okay, so we'll put 23,000, so reduce the 70,500 to 23.
77.5.
77, I'm sorry.
23.
Okay, to 23. I just think it raises the question, though, on the receipt side, but I guess, you know, we made the commitment to, I mean, on the call volume, and the receipts I know are not necessarily related exactly to call volume, because it has to do with collections, also how much is paid.
Right. But the long and short of it for the average taxpayer that's watching this or will see this at town meeting is that we essentially are taking a hit in fiscal 15 of $50,000 for a $250,000 ambulance.
Right, and
Right?
right.
I mean,
And
that's
that-
the nuts and bolts of it.
Right, and maybe the 70,000, you know, which was very aggressive, might have been too aggressive last year.
Well, that was down from 132 the year
Oh,
before.
okay.
So we took a $50,000 hit last year to help boost our fund for the ambulance.
Oh, okay. So we're watching it.
What I've found is I had done a thing out to 5 years, but I think this needs to be watched every year because of the variability and the unknown cost of what we're trying to save for in 5 years. It could be $500,000 in 5 years, you don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe this deal's gonna end because ambulance receipts will never pay for a new ambulance.
Yeah, you don't know, you're dependent on what the insurance coverage is going to be and what Medicare is going to cover, and
and what the trade-in value is if you don't keep the,
yeah, and there's lots.
Well, that's big too. If we have to be prudent at the 250, but if it's 225, that's a big difference too. I mean, that would maybe make the hit only 25 grand.
Yeah.
And then the whole cost of the old fire station and those decisions I'm ready to make, but I don't know if the town is, so
Yeah.
and I don't know if we can do that right now, so.
Can I ask a quick question? And forgive me if we've already gone over this stabilization fund?
Yeah.
Not happening because,
Well, the stabilization, I'm sorry.
No, I
The
mean,
stabilization fund's a unique thing.
It's totally different.
You need 2/3 town meeting approval to take money out, and you need 2/3 town meeting approval to put money in.
do we have money in right now?
We have almost $1 million.
80,000.
Okay.
But that is for
But-
unforeseen,
Big.
really big unforeseen expenses, and I
Well, we
would
did
have
it
hard
for,
pressed.
something that wasn't that big, it was
Well-
20-some thousand dollars,
Well,
wasn't it?
because we knew we
But
could
because it was
do
so unforeseen.
And we
yeah,
promised to
well, yeah.
replenish it.
Yeah.
Got
because
it.
we knew we would have the funds.
Yeah.
And this is, right, this is more methodical and
This is
planned.
not, I would be hard pressed, like advisory reserve, where it's really, I'd be hard pressed to make the argument that it's unforeseen
Yeah, right, exactly.
and extraordinary. There are some people in town that believe that on a $20 million operating budget, that having $1 million rainy day fund is excessive and hoarding, and we have, you know, this cash position that we really shouldn't have. I don't tend to believe that, especially as we're trying to drive free cash down to sort of bare bones.
Right.
and stuff.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know that existed.
Department of Revenue recommends 4 to 6%.
We're-
It's 5% of your operating budget. Now, if that's the case, then $1 million is
Right on,
right on the money of a $20 million budget. And our bond rating is affected by how much stabilization we have, the ability to borrow money.
And the same thing with free cash and
Right.
the, yeah, I was gonna make
No,
some-
thank you. I just, I
It's a
remember
really
that.
different, animal. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Okay, go.
One other thing, I don't know if you're gonna cover it, and if you are, I'm stepping on your toes, but did you wanna just talk about what Harold found out from last
Yeah.
week? Were you
No,
gonna do that?
that's just, next thing, next
Yeah.
thing,
Sorry,
to sort of review where everybody from prior meetings, so, just gonna do, the first one, which was an old one, Margie, we had asked her to take a look at what she had paid for training in 2013, and how many people are participated, and it's almost exactly what was budgeted, $2,385 for training. There were 159 trainings between 26 people, and the average trainings per person, the average is 6 trainings per person, but at least 8 people made 10 or more trainings for the year. This number does not include Dave. So it was almost exactly right on what the budgeted amount had been for 2013. So I think that gives a little comfort, or gives comfort as to what the what that budget item includes this year. Another comment, Stasha had raised this question about the EMT
Cadet program?
cadet program,
Yeah.
and that, go ahead, mind you.
Well, it actually came from, to give Brad credit, even though he's not here, he was the one who pointed it out at the school committee meeting, and I said, oh yeah, that's a good point, and so I went and I checked and double-checked the numbers, and they just weren't.
So the ambulance shows a budget of $13,820, and in the district, the Neshoba Regional School District, the cadets are listed at $12,480. The difference is $1,400. And so we asked Margie to take a look at it, and she said, she spoke with Ann Farrell, the cadet program coordinator. I didn't know this, but the budget for the cadet program has been the same for the last 14 years. Neither of us knows why there isn't exactly a 50-50 split, but the numbers have been the same since Ann started as program coordinator. It sounds like the school pays for the gas for the cadet car, so it is probably pretty even. Hope this helps. So I don't know if we want to look at it any further, so that we're paying $1,000 more, or $1,400 more for the cadet program than is allocated in the NRSD budget.
Well, and their gas would be in a separate line item?
Buried some, yeah. Yeah, it'd be hard to know, and it's nearly equal. I don't know what the committee feels.
Well, it's not a lot of money to disagree about, but I think the principle of
50-50 split.
50-50 split should be
50/50.
reinforced.
I'll send something off to the school committee.
And if they can show that there's $1,000 in gas that they know is attributable to the program, then it's pretty much in line.
Okay, will do.
Right?
Okay, and I'm going to get to Harold in a second. But so we had a long discussion.
I want to say something about
Sure.
the resource officer.
Oh, yeah,
when you're
that's
Good.
There's been discussion about COLAs for people receiving, that are technically volunteers receiving compensation, also known as stipended individuals. And I just want to point out that was all clearly delineated in a Board of Selectmen meeting on February 7th, 2013, who will be receiving COLA, that are in this category, who receives COLAs and who does not. So that can all be found in the Board of Selectmen minutes of February 7th. I'm not going to go over it.
Excellent.
But it's all
It was very
good.
detailed on the conversation that I had. I think Bob was there too with this one.
Right, and I know Bob had really stipulated that he wanted something in the minutes, and it's totally in the minutes, and I
Because
sent it
no
to
one was
Julie,
gonna
and Julie's
remember
got
it,
it.
so
Yeah,
we needed
yeah, it was
that.
very detailed.
Beautifully
Julie's got it.
depicted in the minutes,
Yeah, so we're all set with that. We'll go to the department, DPW department. Harold's, so we, the end of the meeting last week, we'd asked Harold and Shelley to look at a couple of items. The first one was highway wages, and that this had been, seemed to be less expended than was budgeted for several years. And at the time, they thought it might have something to do with people leaving and with the EMT, and that's what they found. So what Shelley has sent back to us is that it's historically that highway wages have had a balance at the end of the year. In the past, they budgeted approximately $55,000 for EMT wages, 6 people at 40 hours for 16 weeks. Now, this doesn't, sometimes it's used, sometimes it's used more by, more in one year than another. But on average, the actual for fiscal year 11, 12, and 13 has been around $34,000 rather than $55,000 a year. Now, she's asking, and she and Harold feel comfortable with reducing this line item by $10,000, and they say we hesitate to lower it anymore because fiscal year 13 was a year where we had a position unfilled for a large portion of the summer. And when you look at the analysis of this,
cadet fill.
yes, a non-cadet, but it affects the amount. Well, I'm not sure.
It was Sam, and it was a couple of their full-time people that left.
So the expenditures in fiscal year 11 was $40,505, then in 12, $32,403, and in 13, $28,250. So they say that the cadets are a valuable part of our crew. We couldn't get along without them. So the question comes back with I don't know. I think that the line item should be reduced. Now the question is, how much should it be reduced? They're suggesting $10,000.
Yeah, so...
It looks more like 20, but...
Well, some of that is, so the cadet aside, I think the notion that's been floated by some that we should plan for the inevitability of having a staff member leave and taking us time to replace that person, and then having that person be replaced at a lower salary, I think is irresponsible. I think that salary lines, other than cadet, are an inventory, a scientific calculation of who's on staff today, who we expect to continue to be on staff, what their salary is. It's a simple sum, very scientific, and the idea of budgeting for an unknown vacancy, if you will, is not the way that we should be conducting our business. Again, cadet program aside.
Well, again, in that case, if the person doesn't leave, or if a person doesn't leave, advisory committee cannot commit money for, when you expect someone to work for 52 weeks a year, and they actually work 52 weeks a year, that's not an unexpected expense.
Right. And so the idea of lowballing the budget, expecting someone to leave and be replaced with someone at a lower salary that takes 2 months, and then if it doesn't happen and you don't have the funds, that you can always come to advisory for a transfer, to Bob's point, is not a proper use of advisory reserve.
Also,
because
we would
you
have
have
run out of
someone that
money a
works.
long time.
So the unexpected is, we didn't expect this person to work all 52 weeks. We expected them to leave sick in July and be replaced in September. Is just asinine.
I mean, I would like to just look at this as the cadet piece of it.
Well, no, but this is another part of it, Terry, right?
That's it. Are you seeing that?
We asked them to look at if it was true that some of the variability or underspend was as a result of people leaving, full-time people leaving, and then taking a couple months to get hired back, or to their replacement to be hired. So they did validate that that is the case for the past 2 years. And then in addition, we asked them on the cadet. So the cadet looks like it's $20,000, historically low. They're willing to sacrifice 10. Again, to Bob's point, so what if we have a run on cadet money next year, and all of a sudden...
What if they don't take vacations?
That's right, then they gotta come back.
You've hired them for 12 weeks, they all work 12 weeks.
Right.
You can't say that that's an unexpected expense.
I feel comfortable with the 10.
It's not,
if that's coming from Harold.
it's not common business practice. You wouldn't do it that way out in the business world. But
You're
because
dealing with high
we,
school kids and,
well, not just that, but because we have to live under Department of Revenue regulations,
Right. I will speak to the business world. In the business world, I do budgets in the business world that deal with several tens of $1 million worth of salary. We have what's known as a vacancy credit. On average, it always happens that someone leaves, it takes 2 months to replace them. We typically take 3% of the annual salary and we reduce the salary by that in anticipation of this vacancy. The difference is in a corporation, if that 3% doesn't get realized, you just have an actual to budget variance and the people get paid. In a municipality, to deal with that higher actual than budget, you have to find the money somewhere. And the only avenue for people to find money is to come to us for a transfer, and it's not unexpected to have someone work a whole year that's on salary. And so that's the difference. It's not a foreign concept to have the idea of planning for vacancy. In a municipality, I don't think that there's any way not to plan for vacancy.
unless you intend to make it happen.
Unless you have a scheduled layoff that
Right.
you know is going to happen.
Right, unless you intend to make it happen.
Right. So if Harold and Shelley are comfortable
comfortable
with
with
10, then
10,000?
I'll take the 10.
10,000?
I'll take the 10.
Yeah, okay, good. And then the second item had to do with the transfer station containers. We've spoken with our vendor and we are able to rent containers for $40 per container per month.
It's awesome.
It's amazing. I credit the two of you with that brilliance of
They gotta
asking
be
about
made out of
rental.
cardboard or something like that.
At this
For
time, we
$40 a
feel
month.
that renting makes the most sense, and therefore would like to ask to reduce our request to $3,000 for the line item 433, 5488 to 3,000. It had the 22,000, 1,000 for incidentals and 21,000 for containers, or 22,000, it must have been 23, whatever.
It was 22.
23, yeah, and to remove the capital request for the 22,000 for these containers. The 3,000 that they're asking for represents 1,000 for incidentals and 2,000 for rental of 4 containers, 2 trash and 2 recycling. Harold would like to replace both trash containers at the same time.
Yeah, so now that instead of getting one brand new one, they're gonna get 4 that they rent.
For $40 a
And
month.
it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
So does everybody agree with that this is the way to go on this line
Yes.
item?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I will let them know that we made those changes.
One other thing I don't think you mentioned that I just want to mention is there was some discussion on what happened to the library budget. I thought we were pretty clear last week, but in case we weren't, we put restored the electricity back
Yes.
to the library because the analysis that had been presented to us on kilowatt hours per times the cost of expected kilowatt hours under an incomplete understanding of what the town's utility locked rate was incorrect, and the library asked us to restore the $6,000 reduction in electricity that we had originally done, and so we did that sort of, or you did that.
In this budget.
And then we had to restore the books formula, and so that.
And that's all
what
been
happened.
handled, right?
And Don has asked us to level fund all electricity budgets from 14 to 15 because of the uncertain nature of sort of commodity prices.
Well, okay. Oh. Sorry, folks. I'm just shuffling paper here, too much paper. Okay. So we talked about stipends, highway wages, transfer station containers. You had some comment about school resource officer?
I just went to administration and asked about what they felt the purpose of the resource officer was, and was that person living up to it, and they thought they were worth their weight in gold at the high school.
We've heard that, heard that both from Dawn, from Vin. And so a question, Julie, to you is, did we ever true up whatever that income from the school district is for the school resource officer?
Are they paying 100%?
Yep. What I'd asked Vin for.
No, right now it's just at 50.
Okay, it was to come up with what the actual expense is for the year, but I have not, I can get back to that, I guess.
I think we told everyone at town meeting that the total expenses were gonna be unchanged for fiscal 15 at the
Huh?
Tri-Town, for the resource officer.
I don't remember that. I thought-
Not a town meeting.
Not a town meeting,
Yeah.
the Tri-Town meeting.
I wasn't at that meeting, so that was what was said, so then,
I
so
believe
that the
so.
revenue then should be just twice of what was, do you believe so?
Well, yeah, twice of whatever we collected, whatever we said the total amount was in fiscal
Because I don't think I can
14.
find it on the budget in the school, NRS.
Oh, no, it'd be buried someplace.
So you think that the effort is not appropriate to find out what we would be billing? So what you're saying is we're billing the same?
Yeah, but
But we're gonna get 100%.
my expectation is that reflects what it's actually costing us.
Well,
We can ask Chief
yeah,
Alfano when he comes in.
Okay, so we'll just, why don't you just show the total. And we'll deal with sort of refining that. And the other thing, we had sort of alluded to last week when the school committee was in to talk to them about, maybe having back. How's everybody feeling about that?
Well, I was gonna ask you if you had an update on.
Have not update on
any
nothing.
of have they had another meeting? When do they plan on formally adopting or questioning the budget? Do we have-
March 11th, is the date that they're going to formally adopt the budget, and I don't know whether they've had another meeting. I don't know if they're coming to, well, nobody's...
I just wonder, you know, we kind of asked some good questions, I think,
Yeah,
when we met with them on the scenario testing, you know, stress
Yep,
testing,
yep.
given, you know, what would go if you had to cut a percentage point off the assessment, and
Yeah.
I don't think that we ever formalized an avenue in which they would.
Well, I think we sort of said that they would come back, but I don't know whether it's, you know, do we send them a letter, do we send them a note, do we...
Maybe we send them a letter just saying, hey, we had raised a few issues, most notably the use of, potentially the more use of free or E&D, and
the tiering.
some scenario tiering, you know, alternative funding
Yeah.
scenarios, and do you have anything to report? And let them say, we're not interested, or we're looking at it.
Okay.
I mean, because we don't know at this point.
No, we don't, and that's what I wanted to bring back, because I kind of said, I think we kind of said, well, we'll have you back, and if we want to formulate that, then formulate it, make it more formal, not formulate, but make it more formal, make an invitation back. Bill Cleary's coming in sometime, I think, next week? No.
Couple weeks.
Couple weeks. But we don't have that much time, because March 11th, it's just a month away, so we probably want to get them response. So why don't I'll send out a note to the committee members, and
He's coming in March 4th.
March 4th, okay. It's still before the finalized next year, which is good.
That's close.
Yeah, it's a week away. Okay, so this is the updated, did you want this, David, regular kid? It's getting late for me, I'm trying to get out by 10 in 2 minutes.
The only thing,
I just want to say that we took out a couple of things from, this reflects Julie's current spreadsheet. The COLA and COLAs for both union and non-union contracts are still estimated. We'll have them probably by next week finalized, but these were the estimates given by Julie, so they're good. Took out the $40,000, under the line under non-school items, took out $40,000 from Fiveshire Dam and $22,000 from the containers. So we still have some duplication here of the police cruiser in 2 places.
Can we leave the police the police cruiser in there as a line item and just put 0 next to it?
yeah, or do what you did with the ambulance.
Do it, okay, I'll be happy to do that. I'll do it at 40, I'll put 268, I'll make it, like with the ambulance.
And you were gonna change old fire station paint repair
No,
to
to
historical fire station or whatever. And I guess that would be my question, that of all these items that I think we can address each and every one of them. The one that really needs some work is, and I think unfortunately we have to throw this into the the selectmen's purview.
This is fire
Is
station.
what is, who's gonna make the decision on keeping the old ambulance? Who's gonna make the decision on what we continue to use the old fire station for? Is it worth $28,000 of repair? Who's gonna, because right now, I can tell you right now, I won't support $28,000 to fix a building that has no dedicated use at this point, and I'm not sure that that's my decision to make.
Okay, and but we should have an opinion which we're willing to express to the selectmen
Yeah.
on both of those items. Should we keep the old ambulance,
Right.
and is it worth spending any money on the,
Yeah.
Fire station.
on the old, the historic fire? You can just
I
put
don't think
fire
it's-
station here, because there's only one fire station. You don't have to put old, and then you,
Well, it is-
These were what was, this is what was stated
Old
on it.
meaning the original fire station, historical meaning the old building to the right of the
They're
fire
two
station.
different buildings.
no, I realize that, but the fire station
Is the fire
is
station.
the fire station.
You know how, that I took that wording exactly off what is listed on the warrant, for the warrant article.
So you didn't ask, and I don't know if you're gonna do a poll, but in very two succinct sentences, I'm against keeping the old ambulance, because I believe it costs not only $25,000 in salvage value, but an additional $30,000 to find a home to keep it warm. And then, therefore, I'm also against spending any money on the old fire station.
And I think you guys know, I feel the same way. And I've been-
Where I'm stuck on, while I agree with that, I'm also stuck on the old ambulance on this point. If it's good enough to be used as a secondary ambulance, why isn't it good enough to be used as a primary ambulance?
For another year or something.
And if it's not good enough to be used as a primary ambulance, why would we keep it?
Yeah, I.
I don't want to be the second person in an accident
Right.
if you're the one getting the good ambulance.
You better be guaranteed I be the one in the
But
good
I
angle.
defer that discussion, and we're a little bit spoiled because a lot of this new ambulance gets paid for. But let's be clear,
Yes.
a new ambulance is prescribed every 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
There's nothing
We're at 6,
wrong.
right?
I thought it was 5 to 7.
No, but I think we're at 6 right now.
Oh, I thought we were at 5.
I think
No,
we're
no, no,
at
we're
6.
at least at 6.
We're at
Okay.
6.
So, well, it's still, point's valid, right? Is if the ambulance is still running and they're not spending a ton to repair it, do we need to take this $50,000 hit to, even though it's... do-
Which 50,000?
We're
Oh,
gonna
the
say-
50,000 that we're
Or do we put it off?
Or do we put it off another year, and when it's completely fully funded with receipts? And that is some, I mean, we're, I think, skirting the need discussion because it just so happens we have $200,000+ saved up.
Could
But
be,
we're
very
still
good.
taking a fiscal year 15 hit of $50K to buy an ambulance that for all intents and purposes could last another year.
So what I would recommend, maybe just before the next meeting, which we're going to have, and I'll just say something, but have capital planning in, is to relook at the presentation, so we're all clear, that Margie did and that Chief Menser did, so that we know their positions again, and you'll be all set to go. Because, to be honest, I thought it seemed like a pretty good argument to get the new ambulance.
Sure.
But what you're saying right now makes sense too, so I just want to revisit it.
Well, and I think it'd be a lot easier for me to swallow $25,000 reduction
Mhm.
by getting rid of the old ambulance if we had to get a new one. I mean, not
Isn't
that
it-
we have to, because he's
Yeah,
got a
yeah,
valid
yeah,
point.
because we're gonna get
but
money, we're gonna get it back.
It would be a whole lot better.
And with
Yeah.
that, so with that money, the trade-in does not go into the ambulance reserves, it goes into the general fund.
It would, but we would still only need to take out $25,000 less, which would put us into a better position.
Even though we have to ask for the
But you're not
250.
going to get it in the same fiscal year.
Sure-
Maybe.
Sure you would, you get it in 50.
15.
It has 6-month lead time and they're gonna swap it out. I'm assuming it's like going to pick up a new car. You drive the new ambulance, old ambulance there, you give it to them, and you take the new one away. And it's a transaction that's net of 25,000.
I don't think so. I think you've got to sell the ambulance on the
No,
open
you don't think it's a
market.
trade-in?
No.
I don't know.
Can I ask a quick
How
question? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Hopefully it'll be a quick question. Old fire, I should know this, I grew up in this town, but I know the building with the old fire station historical, and then the old fire station
The brick,
that's attached
yeah.
to the new building.
This deal.
So which one is which on here?
The 28,000 is for the historical.
Thank you.
Yeah. the old fire station attached to the new building
Needs a
had
furnace.
3 furnaces in it. We replaced 2 of them last year, and the third one needs to be replaced this year.
So that's kind of a
Do we
no.
need the selectmen to determine the proper nomenclature for the existing usable fire station?
I'll ask Don, I'll get you something.
It's-
Yes,
Please.
ask
I just wanna
Don,
make
and
sure
come
I'm
up with
being asked
standard
right.
uses that we can all agree
It's
on.
Okay.
it's the fire
Capital
station.
planning
There's
is
only
the
one.
fire-
There's only one
fire
station.
station.
Guys,
Thank you.
it's coming out. Fire station furnace. There we go. I'm a historic
Sorry.
fire station paint and repair. No more questions on that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So,
But so then what do we do with our recommendation here on the ambulance and that? I think you need.
I think we have to wait until
I don't, I think
after
we,
capital
capital
planning.
capital planning's next week.
And not only that, I'd like to
Decide.
hear what they have to say about this equipment for the fires, the
Yeah.
jaws of life, because you guys did not get
I can see the 4th.
Yeah,
the
we-
fourth.
I didn't know he changed it to
You
4.
had 3, yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
the 3
Well, he
was
might
what
be kicking himself right now that he changed it to 4. Well, because I think he wants the new
Wants the-
current technology,
Well, he wants
the
the 11,000.
$11,000
wouldn't?
one.
But back to your capital planning, I don't think capital planning is opining on whether they're gonna opine on the ambulance need, not on whether
Right.
we keep the old ambulance.
But they're gonna prioritize, they're gonna make it clearer and, yeah, I mean,
But
if you
they'll
do a
have
straw poll,
but
I'll
they'll
do a
have-
straw poll
But
with
they'll
it.
have an opinion on the building, on the ambulance, on the old historic fire station.
But they might not if they don't know that the only proposed use right now is to keep the old ambulance.
They might not, but we have to wait till next week to see.
Fine.
Right.
I think we can manage to do that. Any other comments about this? Any other business?
Have we gotten anything from Bill Clary as to why he hasn't spent the money on the stuff we gave him last year?
Well, because he's doing the boiler.
No,
No, other than the boiler, no. You know what I can do is I'll send him a note and just tell him what our concerns are.
It's been brought up every week.
Yeah.
Do you expect capital planning to talk about this OPEB annual contribution?
I doubt it.
No, it's a financial matter, it's not a
Do you
capital
want to
matter.
talk?
Move it somewhere else?
No, do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to go home?
I
I mean,
can
it's-
talk about it in a sentence.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're gonna say no, and I'm gonna say yes, and
Well, I want to point out that, as the newspaper pointed out, we're looking at regionalization for the dispatch function. And there's 2 options that we're looking at. One is to basically absorb Berlin's dispatch into our unit. And the second is to absorb Berlin and Bolton into the
into
Devons.
Devon's, right.
In which case our head count would go down. You heard Harold talk about hiring people to do more plowing. Now, he's got people in place now, but, you know, if we go outside for more plowing, I think the DPW staffing would go down a bit, and even possibly the transfer station, because, you know, longer term. So there's a bunch of assumptions in this OPEB annual contribution, which says that headcount's going to remain the same, that may change.
But how does,
And I would be reluctant to commit to that amount based on the fact that, if anything, we think headcount's going to go down.
how do we deal with someone that gets enveloped somewhere else? We are still on the hook for their time of service with us. Correct, Julie?
Correct.
And so it doesn't get, the liability doesn't get extinguished just because they go under someone else's control. We're still on the hook for their accrued pension benefit for the years of service with the town of Bolton. And so I don't think that argument changes the need or the funding amount because we reduce headcount. It might change the future value of it because they're not on our rolls for the
Right.
time
And
now
this is-
until,
right.
but
And this is evaluated every, what, 3 years? And we're into our 3rd year? Yeah, so it'll be looked at again. No, it's, you know, it's, I feel it's an important item to have a discussion on. It is an item that's without a dollar amount listed as a warrant article. I don't know where it's going. We'll be seeing those pretty soon. I don't know who's introducing it. I don't know what it is addressing, but, you know, I have a different feeling on this, and I've already stated it a few times, that I feel it's a commitment we've made and it's an obligation. And right now, it is not required that we fund it, but I think it's important for the town to know that it's a liability of the town.
Sure.
So, whether we do
I
a
agree
piece
with
of
all-
it this,
I
whether we
see.
do $10,000 of it this year,
But we
plus the
already
40.
do. But we already do, Ted.
We already
do
know we're paying
50,000.
actual, but it's for the actual cost. It's not any, you're not,
Well, let's recap the timeline. We created the OPEB fund at town meeting floor. We said, hey, all we're doing is creating the fund. We have no obligation to fund it, and we still have no obligation to fund it.
that's correct.
And
Nothing's changed in a year.
I would not fund it this year.
I wouldn't either.
I was not.
So did the state just say, make a fund?
You were required to create a
Required.
fund and then start thinking about how you might deal with your liability, but currently, there's no
And it's not gonna be a state
Obligation.
requirement.
obligation to fund
Well, it could be
the
state.
pension liability fully, or make steps to it. You're also making a leap of faith too, that, listen, Bolton has this obligation. Bolton, I've said it before, short of a catastrophic bankruptcy, is going to make due and good on its obligations to retirees. It's just a matter of whether we start carving out significant amounts of money to deal with an underfunded pension liability. Businesses and corporations have underfunded pension liabilities all the time.
Right, and they also renege on them often.
Well, those are public entities, a little bit different than municipalities, but understood.
Yeah, and it's
The
just,
town of Detroit, or the city of Detroit
Detroit
went
is
bankrupt. I get it, it happens.
Yeah.
But
So
in a budget cycle that's got so many needs and so many other external forces, I think we'd be hard pressed. This is in my opinion, this is a real nice to have in a normal budget cycle. I don't consider this a normal budget cycle.
How did we deal with it before?
wait, it's not been dealt with
We did
because
not fund it the last 2 years, even though it's been calculated at the,
this is the first time I think it's ever
But I
been.
mean, how do we deal with pension?
We just
This is
pay it.
pension.
Pay what we
This
owe
is
to people
other,
that
these are other
retired.
post-employment benefits.
it's-
Oh, we do it as pay-as-you-go.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
current.
So whatever
It's-
the-
Thank you.
It rolls into the current budget.
People that are
Okay.
retired right now are getting a check every week or 2 weeks from the town of Bolton. This is for people that haven't yet retired, that are going to retire and have accrued years of service with us that we're gonna owe
May not
them.
even be hired yet.
That's true.
Yes, David?
Randy's used the word pension several times, and this is exclusively not pensions.
Yes, it's
This is primarily
healthcare.
healthcare.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So basically, this is to fund, if people retire before they become eligible for Medicare, we have to take care of their medical expenses between, let's say they retire at 58. We have to take care of their medical expenses from 58 to
There's a split.
65.
There's a split.
And we're obligated to do that, and we haven't set any money aside for it. And this is sort of to create the equivalent of a pension fund for paying non-pension.
It's another
things that-
post-employment benefit.
Right.
Which healthcare and pension could be considered.
Not
other-
pension.
But there's no pension.
No,
These
but
are-
in the
in the big
corporate
world?
world, other post-retirement employee benefit is either a pension or medical cost. In this case, it's just medical.
the coverage doesn't end at
It's incorporated,
65,
it's
it
not
just
pensions
gets
either.
reduced.
It gets
You
reduced.
still have a supplemental Medicare plan that we pay 70%.
70%, we pay 70 and they're paying 30.
Yeah, but that's
But it's a
pretty
smaller,
tiny.
it's a smaller
The
number.
killer is that period between 55 and 65. And-
It's a larger one, yes, but it doesn't end at 65.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So I understand, I mean, prudent budgeting would tell you that if you have money, that you should start funding your future liabilities. I just don't see.
We do have money, you just want to give it back to the taxpayers.
Well, it's part of what I'm thinking about. When you look at this list, there's lots of uses for the money that is more here and now than something that we are not required to do, is how I think. I guess that's how I think about it. We're not required to do any of this stuff.
No. It's true. Well, go home. Let's go home then.
I just look at
Food
it
for thought.
ranked with the other necessities, and I rank it as a lower priority item.
I'm still hashing it out.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I have some homework to do.
Yeah, no, it's a different piece. It's not your normal, let's buy a truck,
Right,
you
right,
know,
there's-
kind of a piece. It's
I
another
get it.
obligation, it's another way that it's not part of our budget sometime in the future. It may be a budgeted item once it's required by the state, or whomever, it'll become a budgeted item. But At this
But
point,
then
I thought it
you
was
may not
important
have
enough to be.
choice,
Yeah.
and it made
Yes.
it much larger.
That's true.
So
That's
to
true,
put
so that,
something
yes, and
down-
by paying it now, right, that you do reduce the future.
That's true, and it's also, if towns build up a pile of cash, the state may look at that and say, oh, we're gonna change our other employment benefit rules, and we're gonna take some of that money from you.
They can't take that money from you,
Why?
because it's in a trust and it needs to be, it's an irrevocable trust for that reason.
Know what we set up last year.
It's a trust?
It's
Okay.
a segregated
Alright.
fund that can't be touched once you put, it's
It can only be touched
irreversible.
for that
That's right.
purpose.
Okay.
Which is another reason why we should do it.
Right.
So our employees in town, we
It's
don't
gone,
want to
it's
recognize
gone,
that we
that's
don't use
right.
this money, okay.
You can't take it back
And
in
you-
a rainy day.
No.
Good points.
Any other discussion? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See, I remember.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.